I mean, it's easy at Bathurst. Certainly a lot of things different about this circuit than what we saw a few weeks ago. Hopefully things running nice and smoothly, and we can look forward to a nice couple of races once again like we've had in the past in this championship.
Yeah, to remind everyone as to how things work in the Coach Dave Super Sprint, essentially we've got a qualifying session, just one qualifying session, and then two races, both of which are an hour long. Now, the first race is obviously defined by the qualifying order, and the second race is a top 10 reverse grid, which does always cause its drama, certainly has done over the opening 3 rounds of this championship. There are 2 drivers for each team, so they'll have to switch on that pit stop, and over just an hour's race, it means you don't ever really get into the rhythm. You have to just jump in and basically shoot in the great lap time straight away. It's very, very difficult to sort of get up the speed there, obviously counter to how we normally see multi-driver cars where it's normally an endurance race and you sit in the car for 2 hours, get out, and then sit down and relax. None of that here.
No, certainly no relaxing around here. I mean, as you say, it's a very different situation to what we're going to see right at this very circuit on Saturday in the Coach Dave 1000 race here. So that's going to be an interesting watch. But you're right, the guys have got to be on it straight away. From the moment you get into the car, there's no time to settle in, as you say. These guys could be driving for as little as 25 minutes during a race for one stint, that being the minimum amount of time that you can drive for, and theoretically. So yeah, I mean, it's a very different challenge indeed, and we'll see how they tackle it really. But all of these guys, as we've seen in the past of these races, they're all of the highest quality. They're all of the highest, the top of the top, let's say. And yeah, they know what they're doing, and I'm sure they'll be on it right from the very start, as they'll have to be.
Well, let's take a look at the championship standings then as we roll into the 4th round of the season. You can see at the top of the standings, Dara McCormack and Tinko van der Velde. We do have something to speak of when it comes to this car, because they do have a slight driver change. Tinko van der Velde still here, but Dara McCormack not able to do so. The Yazheat Richard Mille car ahead of the Yazheat Pirelli car, obviously not separated by too much rolling into this round, and the 2 SimWare.Pro by Vides cars. Obviously race winners and such. Very up and down. I don't believe either of the SimWare.Pro cars have actually won this season. Both have a pretty comfortable amount of podiums between them, but no actual race victories. The Joliet Community Car, a team that's won. Veloce, they're 8th in the standing. We will not be seeing those, as far as our knowledge is, out on the racetrack today. They were a race winner back in Barcelona. Clash and R8G round at the top 10. The Kramer Racing esports team that sat there in 6th, they of course were race winners when you were on the broadcast, if memory serves, back in Zandvoort. Obviously a fantastically tight championship that's seen us have lots of different winners. In fact, over the 6 races that we've managed to complete here in the Coach Dave Super Sprint, all 6 have seen different winners.
Yeah, that is very good news for the championship in terms of how close it is, and in terms of who we're picking to take race wins here today. Is that run going to continue on into the 7th race? But you're absolutely right about the SimWare.Pro cars. Comfortable amount of podiums for them, but no race wins, which is especially gut-wrenching for the 42 team, I would argue. Their Bentley has scored 3 second places in this season, but not that elusive victory. Today very much could be their day. And interestingly, the Williams Esports car hasn't been able to notch a victory yet either. So yeah, it's weird how these things can happen from time to time, but yeah, it has done for some of those cars, and we may well be seeing another 2 different winners added to that list here today.
Well, consistency is always king in a championship like this. It's not very long. Obviously, it's just 5 rounds, 10 races, and so only 10 opportunities to go and take a victory. We would typically assume, yes, you would see the same kind of team at least sort of notching their way up there every now and then. But again, over the first 5 races of the season, I did bring this up when we had that race victory back in Barcelona, each of them coming from different manufacturers. It started with the Yazheat Richard Mille car back at Brands Hatch to open the season. There was Jardine Community Car in the Bentley. Then we had Porsche for Kramer Racing Esports. They took that victory. Then it was a Mercedes AMG, the Yazheat Pirelli car taking victory in the 2nd race there. And then it was the McLaren of Veloce that took victory in the 1st race at Barcelona. It was only when we got to that 2nd race at Barcelona where SMP took victory to make it a 2nd victory for Mercedes. I'm waffling on here. Basically, my point is that obviously different tracks appeal to different cars. We've seen it switch up and time again throughout the running of the season.
Yeah, this is the thing, especially about ACC, that you'll notice the car selection is very important. We do see a lot of different manufacturers up towards the front at the moment, although Mercedes and Bentley are quite well represented, it has to be said. Different, as you say, different cars suit different circuits, and it balances itself out over the course of a season. For example, Brands Hatch, very different to the likes of Bathurst, which is much faster in terms of long straights and whatever, and all kinds of different circuits on our calendar this time. So in this season, I should say. So. Car selection very important, but it's all about kind of averaging it out nicely and having a solid car throughout. Which obviously these guys will have factored in at the start of the season. But yeah, we do have a nice variety of cars, as you can see on the left-hand side of your screen here. Nice variety of cars here in the Super Sprint series, which is exactly what we want to see.
Yeah, we do like the variety. It's the spice of life, so I've been wisely informed. Just to remind you as well, on the championship standings, some people might have been a little bit more confused. The standings that we saw, it might not be the same order that you've seen on the SimGrid.com website where all of these results and stuff are held. It's because we've introduced a drop round. So the worst results of your season, be it 1 round, 2 races, will be dropped from your points total, which is kind of fair enough. I see how we see it in these kind of seasons. Some teams have had pretty poor rounds for whatever reason. Be it through bad luck. I mean, look at the Simware.pro by Vides. Their results in the championship was second, 27th, 2 retirements, and then 2 seconds. Kind of just balances that one out, as we'll see. That car coming across the line. I'm pretty sure it was the 42 as well that had pole position the first 2 rounds of this season, as Robbie Stapleford also crossed the line. Whilst we're in qualifying, we'll speak about setting good times in something slightly different coming up here in the SimGrid. It's the Coach Dave time attack. Which will be starting fairly soon. You can see it there. We'll go through Suzuka to Spa to Nürburgring, the 2nd to the 8th of May, an open qualifying with different rounds to sort of decide who's going to be at the top. And then once we get to that final round, which will be decided by a public vote, it'll be a broadcasted round, which will be a great event, by the way. Kind of seen the format and stuff where I think we're going to have a lot of fun there on the 26th of May. All in the same car and all for a $1,000 prize pool, $700 going to the winner of that event, which, to be fair, if you're pretty confident to get up to speed quite quickly and you can get into that broadcasted final with, let's just put it in big air quotes here, relative ease, that is not a bad payday for what could be not actually as much work as putting in a 5-round season like we've got here.
Yeah, absolutely. It is a much shorter kind of time frame for that time attack championship. So yeah, we look forward to seeing what's going to happen there. And yeah, it's another kind of new initiative, new format, kind of to see what's Yeah, it's a kind of what racing that can produce and whatever. So yeah, looking forward to that. And yeah, we'll see how that pans out over the course of May in the maiden part. So. Yeah, more things to look forward to here at the SimGrid, which is obviously a good thing. And of course, as I already mentioned, the 1000 race, which is just here in just 2 days' time.
Yeah, which will be an awful lot of fun. Unfortunately, you'll probably have to put up with my voice throughout, so sorry about that. But either way, as we're rolling through in this qualifying session, Novikov, who's on pole position at the moment, it was the number 42. I don't remember if it was Novikov behind the wheel in both. I'm pretty sure he wasn't behind the wheel in the second one. I think it might have been Bykov back in Zandvoort. But either way, the number 42, despite not having a race victory in the Coach Dave Super Sprint thus far, they've had 3 second place finishes, but they have had pole position in the opening 2 rounds of the championship. Of course, it was the Veloce team with Dave Baldwin that had pole position back in Barcelona. And we'll ride on board with Darren King. Of course, we know this is a very popular team within within the community here on ACC. You can see going into Neil, they're going to really open that corner there, throw it over the second part of it, running into toes, sort of a late apex. Some might take it to double apex. A lot of drivers come in for that last bit, so you can really drive it off the corner up towards Piratella, which realistically, if you've not messed up Toza, is not an overtaking opportunity. Yet we do sometimes see the odd dive bomb into here. It's a very, very swift double apex left-hander, but that second apex is so late. That's a little bit too wide there from Darren King. Managed to get it back over to the left-hand side before the tricky braking zone of Mineral Water, Aqua Minerale, find it up to that final apex and then shoot it on a straight line off of the corner before we get down to Variante Alta, not the hardest braking zone known to mankind. You've got to be brave with the curb usage. Obviously, you can get slowdown, you can get issues by extending track limits there, but you've also got to be brave just not to lose the rear end. We saw those issues, let's be honest, at the weekend in the certain open wheeler championship. Down into the braking zone, into the final corner, over the left-hand side of the curb, over the left-hand side again, and run it nice and wide on the exit, and straight towards the line. It's not the smoothest lap, and I kind of understand why Darren King brings that one into the pit lane, but yeah, I mean, it was all right. It was a nice tidy lap, I guess, to some degree.
It was a good chance for us to look around and yeah, get a bit of a view as to what this circuit is really like from the driver's point of view, I suppose. But yeah, coming into the pit lane, it's kind of the ideal time to do so as well. We're about halfway through at this session at the moment. If you kind of want to regroup a little bit and then send yourself back out there with just over 5 minutes to go, then now is the ideal time to come down pit lane, and a few others are deciding to do the same thing as well. But that car only managing one top 10 out of the 6 races so far. They're going to be looking for a little bit better today, but King is putting them in a decent place to indeed do that, with a 9th place at the moment. But the gaps are unusually big, it has to be said. Half a second only covers the top 4 today, which is a little bit less than what we've seen in events in the past. Robbie Stapleford and this BMW, and Novakov as well, 2 very fast drivers, and they're putting a lot of time into this field very early on here.
Well, the second pole position, the one from Simware.pro by Vides, that gap between first and second, that was enough to separate the entire top, to be honest, the top 8 back on that day. It was 0.218 that race work. They were in 8th position, were off of pole that day. So that is a monster gap, realistically speaking, in this style of championship. So that would be suboptimal for some of the teams, but it just shows that this is a very, very difficult circuit, kind of to a different level to some others, because it kind of entices you to play with track limits a little bit more, get those laps invalidated. I am sure those gaps will come down. We've got 6 more minutes left of this session. We will see tighter margins, but it is a dominant stranglehold on the qualifying that Robbie Stapleford is showing in that BMW M4, which, to be honest, it's kind of weird that we only have one M4 in the championship. It's kind of just the lone one of them. Obviously, we know what BMW G2 Esports are like with their BMW, obviously picking it due to the partnership with BMW, but it is just odd that no one else took it.
It is a little bit strange. I wouldn't pick it personally, but there we are. I don't like it, that's why. But yeah, but you expect to see a few more, especially when it's performing like this. You know, in the low 40s at the moment, putting a lot of time into the most popular manufacturers like Mercedes and Bentley, which is mobbing the next 7 places. That is a little bit of a surprise to see. And speaking of surprises, Williams Esports Championship leaders outside the top 10 at the moment as well, so that is a little bit of a surprise too, and 8 tenths down, which is quite a lot for this stage. But it is one of those circuits, as we said before, where you can gain and lose a lot of time very quickly. It's a tricky circuit with a lot of direction change, undulations across, of course, and not too many overtaking opportunities, in all honesty. But in qualifying, that does mean you can end up putting a lot of time into some people and gaining a lot of time if indeed you get things right, and if you don't, then obviously you're going to be losing a lot of time. So yeah, it's not a huge surprise to see these gaps at Imola of all places, but even so, as you said, we do see closer qualifyings here at the SimGrid more often than not.
Yeah, Alexander Novakov then across the line in that number 42 to begin another lap. We're approaching the final moments of the session. 0.217 off of that pole. Like you said, the Merc of Tinko van der Velde is a lot further off than we would expect from that Williams team, but I was kind of alluding to it before. There is a switch within the Williams Esports camp. Darren McCormack is not racing this evening, as far as our entry list shows. It's Harry Spears that will be jumping in behind the wheel to assist the number 80 Williams Esports car this afternoon/evening. I mean, it's going to be a pretty tough day. We're kind of discussing a little bit beforehand about the weather before we went live. It's quite hot out there, realistically. 30 degrees track temperature expected to rise throughout the running of the day. I mean, you can see the in-game time is 11 a.m, so we would suspect that temperature is going to rise throughout the races, which just makes things a little bit difficult keeping those tyres in check and getting the pressures right, which is going to be super critical this afternoon.
Yeah, all important pressures once again going to be a major talking point here, and it's only going to get hotter, especially for race one, because it will be starting at midday in game time and going into the hottest part of the day overall. So that's going to be a challenge for everybody. However, race two will be a little bit different when the temperature begins to just dip down ever so slightly when the sun goes down. Here in that race, so we'll see how the drivers kind of manage that one. The other problem for them is the fact that they've just had a practice session that was in colder temperatures than this, so it's all a bit of a minefield for everybody at the moment. But you can be sure they've practiced in this kind of situation before, as Novikov comes over the line at the moment.
See if Novikov can actually improve. It's 0.217. It remains 0.217. Robbie Stapleford starting what will be his penultimate lap of the session. We did see as well Alex Smoljar roll up to the third position. He's had a bit of experience racing around here in the very recent past, i.e. at the weekend. I don't remember his results being particularly great. I think he had a top 10 in the first race. But either way, obviously having done some real racing around here, don't think it's educating him too much as to what's going on. We know how fast Alex Smoljar is in the sim side of things. Elsewhere in racing, when we did the VCO Esports Racing World Cup earlier on in the year in January, he's the only driver that had a podium on all three of the simulators on iRacing on ATC that we have here and on rFactor 2, which just shows how adaptable he is. Clearly finding some decent pace, the fastest Merc at the moment. I'm not sure the Merc is the car to be in around here right now.
Well, it's third, fourth and fifth at the moment. Suggests that it's there or thereabouts, but not quite setting the pace at the moment, as Smoljar goes only 0.04 of a second behind his previous best lap time. Going to be a little bit frustrated maybe that he can't just edge himself ever closer to the leader, but 3.5 tenths down at the moment might just be enough. But definitely a place on the second row, possibly on the inside of it in third place. So he's looking good for that at the moment. But yeah, very adaptable over the free sims, which is exactly what you want in a team. If you're looking for a driver to represent you and you've got your eggs spread across different baskets, so to speak, then he's exactly the kind of driver you want. Third place at the moment.
Yeah, like you say, it's also, I know it's difficult to pass around here, but also still it is possible to pass. So I don't think that, qualifying in the top 5, you're a-okay for the race. As Robbie Stapleford continues to improve, goes down a few hundreds of a second to 40.200. Valentin Barriere, one of the race winners in the Bentley, now 4th position for them, so an improvement for the Jardier community team, as we'll see Patrick Noj come towards line. 17th position at the moment for the GT Omega RPM Esports racing team. Not looking so strong for the Astons, but either way, moving his way up the order. Of course, we know Darren King in that Aston Martin's inside the top 10. Patrick Noj just missing out with 11th spot. Still, we're starting the final laps of this session. I think Darren King just going to miss out, certainly is.
He crossed the line almost exactly as the checker flag came out there, unfortunately, so he's going to be no higher than 8th. Might even be pushed down even a little bit further. But in terms of toppling Robbie Stapleford, it's not looking like anybody is going to be able to do this now. Novikov needs over a quarter of a second at this stage. Here he is. He's going to do well to find that. You would imagine Smoljar in the pit lane at the moment. We saw Barry starting one last attempt, but it's very difficult to see that BMW being displaced from the top of these standings, although Novikov is going to give it a good go. Into Ravazza for the final time, out the final corner. It's not looking like it's going to be enough for first position, but you never know.
Yeah, straight to the pit lane, get that final practice on pit lane entry, which is going to be critical around here. It's not the easiest pit lane in the world. I mean, it looks very, very simple, but kind of lulls you into it, and finding a brake marker to get down onto speed, obviously, as you're accelerating there, can be a little bit tricky. Robbie Stapleford, a 40.2. Does indeed improve, 40.162. An incredible lap time from Stapleford, showing that M4 is very, very strong indeed around this Imola circuit, and I don't think anyone will be able to topple that time. A little bit of battling between two of the Red Veltman cars, of course, the Unicorns of Love Sexy Edition version, as well as their own, as we'll see Abelad's come across the line in the Simware.Pro by Vides, number 41. No improvement from them. We'll just see these two cruising around. I think you can see their lap times have both finished and laps. They're just cruising around, getting in those final moments of the session, a little bit of race practice, a little bit of fun as well. But Robbie Stapleford, different planet than everyone else. I was going to say different postcode. I don't even think he's in the same country right now.
No, he's certainly a step above the rest, head and shoulders above the rest at the moment. But it's all about the 1 hour, of course. When you start to factor in, you've got two drivers. It starts to become team versus team. We know that Stapleford seems to have the measure over the entire field as an individual, but will he have the team to back him up over a 1 hour race? It's very plausible for him to build up a nice lead in the first half of the stint and just let a teammate hang on to it. But I get the feeling that at BMW, it's not even going to be like that. It's going to be all-out pace from them from start to finish, and they are going to be difficult to beat. The start is going to be very, very important around here, not only because it's very, very tight into the first chicane at the Variante Tamburello, but it's the best opportunity you're ever going to have in this race to make up places. As dangerous as it sounds, it is the truth, really. So those guys on the outside, especially Novikov, has to at least try something to get near the BMW, because it might be difficult to stay with it, the 62, as this race continues on.
Yeah, we can see the grid obviously lining up here, standing. You've got the BMW, you've got the SimWare Pro, you've got the 888, but this car just here on the left-hand side is one that I think we should all take a little bit of a note. Great qualifying session from the number 44 Jardier Community car from Valentin Barrière. However, there is an issue with that car. In the way our license system works here is that you essentially get a certain amount of license points. Once you start breaching license points for receiving penalties, then you get harsh penalties or harsher penalties for the next round. Now, the way it works is that if you passed 3 license points, which that is one of the cars that has, the third license point that you get will give you a 15-second time penalty in this race. It'll be added, of course, to the pit stop time. The other one with a penalty is that car just there on the right-hand side, the number 81, if memory serves, the S&P Racing Esports car that Sherman Tinsky is behind. Those two will come into the pit lane. When they come in for their stop, it's not a 15-second stop and go penalty as far as I remember. I'm sure Michael Hamlet will correct me, but it is a 15-second time penalty to be added to the stop. So it's a big slap on the wrist, yes, but it's not evening ending. And I think that's kind of the critical thing, is that they can still get out there and race. They just have clear evidence to show they've done wrong. Nice little group of the Ren Welton cars here as well, down towards the back end of the top 20.
Yeah, almost like they're planning a photo shoot, really, further down towards the back, but we can assure you they're not. But yeah, you're right, the 15-second penalty, I think that's the idea, really, isn't it? To not completely push them off the face of the earth with a penalty, but just kind of push them back a little bit. So you can almost think of it as a similar thing to success ballast, in the way that it gets applied before the race, and you've kind of got to factor it into your race. You can be sure they are going to have to think about that in terms of when they're going to stop, who they're going to come out behind, because obviously they're going to lose time compared to the rest of the field. So they're going to have to factor that in the same way, really. And that is going to be especially hurtful around here, you would imagine. But they're going to look to try and, especially up front in that 44, kind of get clear, try and find a bit of clean air, put a bit of pace in, so that they can maybe distance some of those behind, and then fall behind less cars during the pit stops. I would imagine they will stay out for until the end of the pit stop window, really, because then they can use as much time as possible to put distance into those behind, and then have as little cars as possible to overtake in the second half of this first race.
Yeah, like you say, when it is such a difficult circuit to overtake on, you don't want to pit too early, thinking about the battle that you're in of getting the undercut on this person you're battling with. You don't really want to think about that too much, because in all honesty, you're just going to pit in early, and then you're going to come out into a train, and then you're not going to be able to make the passes. You're going to lose more track position than you're going to gain. Those kind of things to really think about when it comes to strategy. And this, whilst it is almost, you could classify as simplistic, there's a pit stop they've got to make in the middle 10 minutes of this race, between 35 minutes to go and 25 minutes to go, and they've got to pit in there. But there's a lot more to it. Also, there's different strategies between each of the races, just to point out and clarify as well. In race 1, in this race that we're going in now, they must change tyres and they must add fuel in this race to complete that pit stop. In the second race a bit later on, they aren't allowed to change either, or I'm pretty sure they probably still can, but realistically you wouldn't. But yeah, they won't change this. That's a good point, actually. That's but yeah, no, in this, they have to. And it's kind of that's a little bit of a dynamic that I like.
Yeah, this is the problem I found, particularly GT3 racing. Often sprint racing has had 2 1-hour races and they're identical. This format allows the races to be slightly different, which is certainly a good thing. And of course the fact that you can't have the driver starting this race for your car start the next one. So Stapleford will be able to take the green flag here. But his teammate is going to have to start the next race, and he's going to have to finish off the race at race 2. So it does mean that both of your drivers on your team do have to be comfortable with starting the race, which might sound simple at most circuits, but around here it is going to be a nightmare, you'd imagine. But you can't avoid it if you're in this championship. You do have to take on one start throughout the day.
There's quite a few teams, by the way, as well out of position. 17th place to number 75, Yassi Pirelli car, of course. They're right up there in the championship. Samir Foch alongside Mr. Yaroslav Honzik down in that car. So that's not ideal for them down in 17th. Obviously getting the final bits of tyre warming in. Front row of the grid, Robbie Stapleford, Alexander Novikov, Smolyar, Valentin Barriere. As much as that car, the number 44 Jardier Community car, does have a penalty to serve, they are still going to play a very key factor in the start of this race. Difficult to overtake, but not impossible here at Imola. I'm sure we're going to see our fair share of racing, especially on that run down towards Tamburello for the first time. 1 hour is to be put onto the clock as we'll get ready to go racing in the penultimate round. 4 races left to go in the Coach Dave Super Sprint here at the SimGrid. We'll see if Robbie Stapleford can lead from his first pole position. There was a bit of an incident for him back in Bathurst, but we'll see if that will continue, maybe play on his mind a little bit here this afternoon. Robbie Stapleford comes towards the line in the BMW G2 eSports car alongside the Simware.Pro by Vides as we'll get ourselves underway for the first race here at Imola. Green flags in the air, we're underway. It's a better start from Novikov though on the outside. That second launch though going well for Robbie Stapleford. It's the Jardier Community car that's dropping backwards behind the SMP. A little bit of contact as I run down towards Tamburello, and Robbie Stapleford is going to lead through the first corner. He is taking it, he is running away. Novikov is dropped down behind Smolyar as well as the darting and weaving behind from the Clash car, from the Simware.Pro by Vides car, the number 42 of Novikov, just trying to hang on, but at the moment Stapleford is in control.
Yeah, he wasn't in control from the very start though. It was a better reaction from Novikov to the lights there. He was able to get alongside, but the accelerator in the BMW just allowed Stapleford to get his nose in front into Tamburello. There was a little bit of contact. It allowed Smolyar through, and it nearly let Novikov drop all the way off the podium completely on this first lap, but he's just about held on to it. And thankfully everybody looks like they've gotten through the first couple of corners nice and cleanly, which is also good to see. But yeah, Stapleford converts that pole position into a lap 1 lead.
Now David Patil in the Clash Sim racing car obviously made a little bit of progress from that start and now trying to attack the Jardier Community car whilst this lap has progressed, going through Aqua Minerale and Variante Alta. Robbie Stapleford, who had a good launch, had a good run around the outside at Tamburello and actually carried a decent amount of speed and cleared off a little bit from Alex Smolyar. That kind of lead, yes, I know, only maybe got up to sort of 7-8 tenths. It's obviously completely disappeared. Now we're going to start speaking about the straight line speeds of each of these cars. Is that M4 fast enough on the straights to keep Alexander Smolyar at bay as we'll complete our first lap on that 888 SMP Racing eSports car? He's on a bit of a charge here, started in third and worked his way up now to maybe even trying to attack the race. Definitely not going to be close enough this time by though, surely.
Oh yeah, absolutely. That BMW has plenty of legs down the straight. There's no doubt about that. Down the first run through the straight, if you can call it straight, I suppose. But yeah, no opportunity into Tamburello at all for Smolyar. He's going to have to really be so close, almost painfully close through Ravazza if he wants to make a move. As dangerous moves into the Villeneuve chicane happening a little bit further down. This 41 car got a very good start actually, but maybe dropped down a little bit. And now we're up back into 7th place once more. Great battling though, great move from Huben right round the outside here at Tosa.
Yeah, nice little go from the RAG Esports team that was battling quite high up in the Bathurst race that we unfortunately didn't see the end of. We'll be waiting for that with bated breath as there's a little bit of contact running up towards Piratella, going around the outside of the number 41. It's a little bit too deep there from Nick Hoban. Lavaland still going to remain side by side before we get into the braking zone, running into Aqua Minerale, getting pushed off in the background as well. One of the Yaz Heat cars, a little bit tricky there for the 449. It's the Williams Esports car that's just managing to get through. Tinko van der Velde getting past on Mikhail Stutsenko as we head into the braking zone of Variante out to that side-by-side up at the head of this group, just caused carnage behind it, caused the opportunity for various people to try and find their way through as Devin Patil has actually dropped backwards a fair amount.
Yeah, it really has. This is a fantastic battle all over. 7th position at the moment. It's really stacking up absolutely everybody, and you don't see side-by-side through Piratella very often. I think that's kind of a reason why, because one of you is going to have to go out a little bit wide, and it's not particularly effective for your race. But it is very entertaining, and yeah, it was a very good battle between the two. The Bentley just look a little bit maybe under pressure there in the background from Van der Velde, who's looking to make a move for Williams at the moment. Down the inside into Tamburello, but just gets his nose chopped off into turn 2.
Well, a little bit brave there, did Tinko van der Velde. Of course, might be thinking a little bit about the championship. I know, obviously, we've got 56 minutes left in this race before we even get into the final 3 hours of this championship. Fair enough. But also, you've got to be thinking about getting inside that top 10. Patil a little bit wide through the final part of Villeneuve, though, going around the outside of Toes, and this could open the opportunity, though. Every time you go for something like that, you've either got to go for it, commit to it and do it, or you're going to be opened up for a move from the car behind. And Tinko van der Velde wants that opportunity, wants to get inside the top 10. Of course, it's where the reverse grid is once we finish this race in 56 minutes.
Yeah, I think he doesn't need to panic about the reverse grid aspect of that just yet. He just wants to make his way through the field as quickly as possible and as effectively without contact as possible. I feel at this stage it's not worth panicking over with 55 minutes still to go. But he will be a little bit concerned about the fact that the gap from 7th to 6th place now is already growing to nearly 3 seconds. It's kind of limiting that team already at a 7th place finish here today, unless of course things go their way. As you see, a bit of defending for 2nd place. Smoljar into the first part of Ravazza, which you don't see very often. It completely compromises you onto the front straight, but he's just about heard off Novikov there. All this, of course, allowing Stapleford to go onto a even bigger lead at 2.5 now.
Yeah, that'll be one thing that at least they'll be sat there in the Williams Esports camp, and that lot being like, look, to be perfectly honest, as long as it's that BMW G2 esports car, as long as they're leading, that's actually not that bad. They're not out of the championship, of course, no one really is, but they're far enough down, they're not really a worry. Tinko van der Velde looks to the inside once again of Oleg Kamenov, but not quite able to find a way through it. Tamburello could work into Villeneuve, though, might be a little bit too close, might have to worry about Stutsenko. Does get that run off, but it's just not enough. The Bentley's fast enough in a straight to hold that Merc at bay, and the 81 of Kamenev just holding on to the final position inside that top 10. Stapleford's leading, and by a very comfortable margin already over Smoljar, courtesy of that little bit of racing between Smoljar and Novikov. Novikov really is the problem for this car, for Tinko van der Velde, because sat there in 3rd position, right up there in the championship as well. The number 42, like we've said before, has had 3 second place finishes in this championship so far. Very, very strong car, and they're looking potentially, obviously it's very early days in this race, but still they're aiming for their 4th podium of the season already, and that's way more than anyone else, apart from Williams Esports, who has 4th.
I'll take your point though. As even just finally getting through now, as we just cut away briefly, he does manage to make the move into 10th position. So finally, Kamenev is displaced from that top 10, and the floodgates really might be open now, because Stutsenko is all over the back of him, looking for a move into Ravazza, but won't be able to do it. Of course, Kamenev has to think about that 15-second penalty as well that has just been applied throughout his pit stop. But yeah, I mean, a little bit away at the moment. SimGrid.pro are 24 points on corrected order. That's not the championship standings we put up on the screen, because they weren't factoring in the drop week. Without the drop weeks, they're a little bit further down, but with them, they're up in 2nd, 24 points off Williams Esports though, and this is a step in the right direction for them. But they'll be kicking themselves that they haven't been able to get into 2nd yet, I think, especially as Williams Esports have finally made that little bit of progress into 10th.
Yeah, now a nice bit of clean air there from Tinko van der Velde, and like you said, that all-important top 10, Mikhail Stutsenko, another one of the cars that really kind of needs to make a bit of progress. They're right up there in the championship in that Yazhit Pirelli, the Yazhit Richard Mille car, which is a little bit further down the order as well, needs to sort of get on with it at the moment. In fact, actually, that 75 has moved backwards a few positions. The winner of the opening race of the season, of course, it was Jaroslav Honzik and George Boothby in that race. No George Boothby in that car this evening. It is Smith Fox, I believe, behind the wheel for the number 75, but you kind of have to deal with that in a championship. You would expect your lineup's going to change a fair amount. Just an FYI as well, the two 15-second time penalties as well for Valentin Barriere and Kamenev. Anyone who's just joined, we did explain it a little bit earlier, it's for breaching their third licence point, giving that car a 15-second time penalty when they come in for their first pit stop, or their only pit stop, halfway through this race.
Yeah, absolutely. That's going to, as we mentioned before the race started, that is going to set them back quite a lot, you would imagine, by 15 seconds indeed. But that was very clever of me. But yeah, we'll see how many positions. That's the real important thing at a circuit like this, as we explained earlier. How many positions is that going to set them back? Where are they going to get up to? As Novikov once again giving it a go around the outside of turn one, not able to do it. It seems like a similar story up and down the field, but it's the Villeneuve chicane. There might be an opening here.
Yeah, it does seem that Bentley's got a little bit more grunt in a straight line now alongside Smolja. Watch out to not there it is, straight over the curb. Oh, and that's Smolja off into the gravel trap, and the SimWare.Pro by Vides car that was in such a strong position realistically didn't need to take that risk, didn't need to make such a bold gamble to get to the inside. I believe it just took too much of the curb, did Novikov. And yeah, obviously that's a one-way trip straight into the side of Alex Smolja's car. We'll need to take a look at it once again, but I know race control will definitely be taking a look.
Yeah, they certainly will, and yeah, Novikov might land himself in a little bit of trouble for that one. I think you're right, there was no need to make that move with over 50 minutes remaining, and indeed a pit stop to attempt to jump that car without even making an on-track overtake. They could have jumped that car, so really unnecessary, whether you think he was at fault or not. It all starts back here at Tamburello, giving it a go on the outside of turn one, though he backs off. Smolja still defends though, so Novikov's still on a nicer line. Mercedes even goes a little bit deep. It's completely compromised through Tamburello and into Villeneuve. Does it? I think this Bentley is just going to hit the curb. He's on a very tight line, forced by the Mercedes. He bounces over that curb straight into the side of the Mercedes, and you would maybe say that is Novikov's fault, even though it was the curb that sent him so far wide. He certainly didn't need to take the risk, whether he was at fault or not.
I think there's one person who's most certainly not at fault, at least through our eyes, in that instant. That would be, of course, Alex Smolja. Didn't really do anything wrong. There's plenty of space given. If anything, maybe even a little bit too much. I know, obviously, there was a little bit of a squeeze running down, but that is perfectly within the rules, because he didn't continue to squeeze. He just held his line off of the previous corner, and that's kind of what instigated the slightly tighter line. Like I say, hard racing, fair enough. I mean, I'm not sure what will be dealt with that, but that's why race control deal with it. Either way, it's allowed the 919 to grab, at the moment, that second position. So Sholomov making a little bit more progress. And of course, the 919 was the car that was victorious in the previous completed race of the season back in Barcelona. I don't think we'll be looking for them to take a victory today, just purely based on the fact of how strong Robbie Stapleton is at the moment. We've done 11 minutes of this race, and that gap is already nearly 5.5 seconds. That BMW is right in control at the moment.
Yeah, it's all of this battling that we're seeing further behind is playing into the hands of that car out front, and I feel like the 919 is going to help further because it's falling back in terms of Novikov's catching that Mercedes, and I feel like we're going to have another battle for second on before very long, because Novikov has got the pace over arguably everybody apart from Stapleford at this stage, just can't find a way through. It's going to be very interesting to see how he approaches another battle here in this race. Does he carry on forward with the same kind of aggression that we saw before? Is he going to be making a move at all, to be honest, through the remainder of this race? Because that will certainly be playing on his mind for the rest of his stint here. But he will have to look over his shoulder a little bit before we get there, because Valentin Barriere is right behind him. We've got King just there as well, the first of the Aston Martins in 5th place right now. So bigger things to worry about for the moment than what's already passed. Smolja's got bigger things to worry about as well. It looks like he's been knocked out of rhythm and he's under pressure for 7th place now.
Yeah, I don't blame him. It's very easy to sort of get knocked out of the rhythm. You can see on your screen there, instant between car 31 and 521 on lap 1. It's a 5-second time penalty to the TF Racing car, and then 34 and 91, 10 seconds time penalty going the way of the 91. That's the racework.com Chris Avere and Sasha Galata car. So a couple of penalties to be dished out from race control. We know they'll probably be looking at a couple more as well. Just how it goes in races like this. We've seen a fair share of instances. I will say for anyone who's just jumping in, the way we've seen things roll throughout the Coach Dave Super Sprint, and I wonder how much they'll change their matter when it comes to getting a stern talking to from Mr. Michael Hamlet, which was race 1's typically been slightly calmer, and then race 2 has been crazy town, and we've really gone to it as well. Obviously they want to they want to reel that one in. He's had his words though with the drivers. I think that's kind of important, race control and those running things behind the scenes. You've got to speak to drivers even before incidents happens to be like, look, that was a bit ridiculous. Let's rein it in.
Yeah, absolutely. He's threatened everybody, and so hopefully they'll be well behaved. Yeah, he had the belt out and he was threatening, if you don't drive well, I'll hit you. So there we are. No, he didn't do that, but you get the idea. It's hopefully going to be a bit cleaner, especially from what we saw at Bathurst a few weeks ago. I know we didn't end up getting to the end of that one, but the start was still pandemonium. And I feel like that will still be playing on a few of these guys' minds. Maybe not today. Certainly will be heading down towards the first couple of corners in a few weeks' time when we come back to Bathurst for what is going to be our finale now in the Super Sprint series. That is going to be just lingering in the back of a few minds, I think, especially those who got caught up in it, which is, of course, most of the field.
It was pretty much everyone. I think also by looking at it, I don't remember if race control took a second look even further, but I know at the time there was talk of it being a racing incident. When you actually look at it, it's a really tricky one because it's basically just people going 4 wide. You can't really blame anyone. It's not kind of one of those ones where there's 2 people to blame. And so, you can then give penalties both. It wasn't even anything like that. It was one of those things. There was a light bit of contact that really wasn't anyone's fault, and then it just caused all of that. It's what the cool kids would say is #racing. I'm not so sure about it myself, but either way, I think it did come down to racing. It's just one of those things that you can have a massive crash like that, and when you actually look at where it started, it came from such a small thing. That's why you penalise the action and not what happens afterwards.
Yeah, exactly. It's certainly what some NASCAR fans would call racing, but there we are. You're absolutely right, though, in what you said. That dramatic, as we see, almost a very similar incident. This is what could have happened to Novikov and Co and Smolyar, I suppose, going through the chicane there. So unfortunate for those two dropping down the field once more, further towards the back of the field right now. But I think you're right about the whole consequences thing. Obviously, people think it's such a big pile-up. There must be someone at fault, and there must be a penalty to dish out. But sometimes there just isn't, despite the fact that it was an absolute calamity for everybody. There really was nobody. You can't point the finger at any one driver, really. So that's just the way it is, and these things can happen from time to time. So let's see, because this is not exactly a wide run down towards the first couple of corners at this circuit either. So we'll see how they tackle it tonight.
Yeah, well, we'll only have to wait and see for that one. Of course, plenty more race to happen. We've got 44 minutes left of this one, and then an hour race in the next. And the spin, by the way, that we just saw, that Ferrari, that was the number 75. Now, on corrected standings, that is the car that's running 5th in the championship. The Yazhi Richard Mille, that obviously corrected standings includes the drop score. So that's not so great. Samir Focci's behind the wheel. That's alongside Yaroslav Honzik. For a team that's right up there in the championship fight, that is definitely suboptimal. Whilst we're focused on this battle for second place, you've got the 919 SMP Racing, you've got the 42, of course. We know this car's potentially a bit under investigation. Alexander Novikov behind the wheel of that. You've got Valentin Barriere, who has that 15-second time penalty for breaching track limits. You've got the Dalkin Community car, this one right here. Darren King with Philip Van Omen behind the wheel as well. They're the teammates take over. And Nick Hovan just joining the rear end of that fight in the R8G Esports. Alex Smolyar's kind of got back into his rhythm in that 888 car that's in 7th, but that is closing in. So it looks like we are going to have a bit of a chunky train here for 7th spot. A little bit wide there for Darren King. That's going to just halt his progress on the run down towards Villeneuve. might have to worry about Nick Hoban.
Well, yeah, we already do have quite a big train. It has to be said, 5 cars at the moment for second place. But the man who really doesn't want to be here at the moment is Valentin Barrier, because he wants to be on his own and trying to gain time on those behind. At the moment, I reckon he'd come out in about 14th. Looking at this order right now, gaps are all very close. You can probably see the back end of the top 10 on the background of that shot there. But if you look at the gap between Hetic and Rupert at the moment, nearly 10 seconds, he would slot into that gap, I reckon, at this stage. And Kamnev even further back, I'm afraid, for him at this stage. But yeah, Barrier really doesn't want to be here. He'd rather be up the road trying to gain some time on those behind. And of course, 14th position is not within the reverse grid places, which is exactly where the 44 will want to be. They've got a much more realistic chance of winning that one, as long as they can be inside the top 10. I know they've still got 40 minutes to go, but they're not really going anywhere at the minute.
Well, it's what they did, the Joliet Community Cars, what they did back in Brands Hatch, the opening round of the season, where they finished 8th in the first race, or 9th in the first race. Also, it wasn't exactly the same, because they get a 15-second time point that day in the first race. But they finished 9th in the first race, which gave them a second place, a front row start for the second race of the evening. And then they ended up taking the victory as well. It was a fantastic drive. But this time, yeah, they want to get past and basically get on with it right now. And I think at the moment, Sholobov is so to speak, it's the cork in the bottle, slowing everyone else down, as there's a bit of a defensive move there from Smolja, now feeling the pressure from Abelard. So you're absolutely right. Kind of seems to get into the rhythm for a couple of laps and then just struggles keeping the eye on the mirror. And whilst it isn't the easiest circuit to overtake on, it certainly is that opportunity coming down to Tamburello. Yeah,
there is always an opportunity into Tosa here for Darren King, and he can't make it work there on the Bentley. But yeah, I think he does certainly have more than one eye on his mirrors at this stage, especially going down towards Tamburello here for Smolja. You'd expect him to be able to close in on this fight, really, not only because they are fighting, but because he was running up inside the top 3 earlier on. So we'll see. Neither of them are about the 42 car, which we're waiting for. Unfortunately, it's for the 521, receiving a couple of penalties. But yeah, Smolja struggling to really get back into the rhythm after that incident with Novikov. I would expect that car to be in pretty much as soon as the pit stop window opens, really.
Which will be opening in 5 minutes' time. So 3 laps when they come around to the pit window will open, and they can dive straight in the opening portion of that window, and then just like try and make some progress from there. But also, you've got to worry, we said it before, you've got to worry about coming in too early and then basically going out in the traffic of everyone else and trying to fight your way through. You're going to lose more time if you come up behind a couple of people. By the way, that 521 car, I'm not 100% sure is one was retired from the race, wheel spin esports in the 521, also picking up 2. They picked up both the penalties there. One of them also was a drive-through. A lot of licence points up there. I'm pretty sure that'll be 2.5. So yeah, not great. That is walking yourself into a pretty substantial penalty going into our season finale, of course, which will be, I believe, rescheduled to a couple of weeks' time. Back to the battle for 7th place, Smolja, Abelard and Pertil. Pertil, who kind of struggled in the opening couple of laps of the race, has found the rhythm once again and now tries to find its way past. That's a dive down the inside from Pertil. Absolutely sent on Abelard with a little bit of contact. That is exactly what Smolja wanted, just to get that SimGrid.pro car off. And look at that for a defensive chop from Abelard. That was absolutely crazy, straight over the nose of the Bentley, and Tinko van der Velde every single second is closing in more and more in that Williams Esports side by side on the hill towards Piratella.
Yeah, it's not done here, but the Bentley with its nose in front going into Piratella should have the move. The Mercedes not quite giving up on the outside line, although he's going to have to down into Aqua Minerale, so drops down into 9th place. Van der Velde absolutely loving this, because he can get very involved with this fight that's now for 8th position. That's exactly how you do the fighting, though, into the Villeneuve chicane. It was wonderfully respectful between the two, although it cost them heaps and heaps of time. Over 2 seconds now to Smolja, who they were trailing. You can already see the effect of Smolja not having 2 cars right up back behind him, because he's gained half a second on the group in front, as there's another little look from the SimGrid.pro car.
goodness, yeah, definitely gave it a nice eye going into the penultimate corner. And like you say, Tinko van der Velde will fancy his way. He'll really love it right up until the moment that it starts costing him time. And I think that moment is, to be honest, around now. Sholobov leading from Novikov in this battle. It's obviously second place at the moment, so they're starting to pull away from Valentin Barriere. A decent gap on the right-hand side of your screen as we'll go side by side. Up on the top end, going around the outside of Abeland. Not really making that one stick. He's trying to get past Pertil. Tinko van der Velde in the Williams eSports car, third in shot, now trying to get his run. And it was this section of the racetrack where Abeland lost out a couple of laps ago. In the background as well, it was Mike Noble and Statsenko that's going side by side. Noble able to hang on from the 449. Merck, I think Statsenko at least for now. They're all starting to kick off going into the pit window sequence. The problem is they're all costing each other so much time by battling like this.
Yeah, it's difficult circuits to overtake, to be respectful, which is, of course you have to be. It costs you so much time, so much time. There's not much room to manoeuvre around here. There's obviously the racing line and then offline, which you need to try and go towards to overtake. At narrow circuits like this, there isn't much offline, so you don't have much leeway in terms of side-by-side battling. You can't drift around as much as you might be able to at some of the wider circuits, like Barcelona, for example, where you'd lose a bit less time. Although you still would lose time, just not as much at a narrower circuit like this one. So it's really costing time. Not only has it put Pentil way behind Smoljak, who they were in a train with earlier on. He's actually invited some others from behind to get involved, like Van der Velde, Kamenev and Noble and Statsenko. Yeah, they're all coming at the moment in that battle for 8th position, but that's all going to change again. I'm sure one of these guys further up towards the front are going to have a titanic scrap, and then people further behind are going to catch up. It's just the way this race is going to evolve, really.
I want to be a little bit happy about that as well. As 4th position, Valentin Barriere. Like I say, yes, sure, the gap's not exactly big enough right now to drop them in, but if they start battling to that sort of severity over the next part, it might drag that Jardine Community car back in. That's why I'd probably encourage Valentin Barriere to just stay out until the end of the sequence, although he has just gone a little bit too deep in the second part of Villeneuve, and I think might be open to a move from Darren King. Watching the background, you can see how close that Aston Martin is for 4th position, just in the background of this shot, running around that Bentley Aston Martin battle. We've got Bentley versus Merck for second.
Novikov's got a 15-second penalty, and I can only assume what that's for. Yeah. So that is going to be very damaging, and he's going to be pretty sick of the sight of Valentin Barriere, I've got to be honest, because they'll be together again. But yeah, he'll be outside the top 10 for sure.
Yeah, and that is going to be very costly, like you say. Obviously, this is one of the cars that is battling for the championship. There it is, confirmation. The 42 and the 888 contact between the two of them, giving a 15-second time. That's a big penalty to the number 42, but that was obviously the contact between Novikov and Smoljak rolling down into Villeneuve. So, I mean, I don't think anyone is really shocked to have seen that. Oh, goodness me.
Oh,
the 521, that's what happened to them. Disqualified for exceeding 4.5 licence points this round as Novikov, pit window open, and bang, straight into the pit lane. Alexander Novikov all the way in almost immediately. That is a big penalty. I mean, it's our first DQ of the season. Well done.
Yeah, that is a very big penalty. Novikov, in terms, obviously, quite a big penalty for himself. Maybe a touch on the harsh side, but I don't think he can argue with the fact that he has got a penalty in the first place, because it's hard to argue that Smoljak was at fault really for their incident, I'm afraid. So yeah, he's going to have to soak up the seconds there and deal with them. Darren King is trying to once again head around the outside at Toza, not working for him. Kind of smart really what Novikov's done though, coming into the pit lane at that particular point, because he was stuck behind the Mercedes going absolutely nowhere. So why not come in, get that penalty out of the way, see where we're at, and then get in some clean air, most importantly, smash out some lap times while everybody else is doing this kind of thing of battling.
Obviously he'll hand over to his teammate Mikhail Baikov. We'll just see how much speed Baikov has behind the wheel. Obviously you can see continuing to drop down. The order might well come out just behind Chris Rivera in that number 91 racework.com car, looking backwards from Valentin Barriere. Nice little gap there from Sholobov. Nick Hoban goes right in. It was the attack coming from Darren King on the rear end of Valentin Barriere, but now he has to worry about Nicholas Hoban, who's right on that rear end in that RHG Esports Merc. And they also have to worry about Alex Smoljak, who's closing in bit by bit, although Smoljak's not really got the largest gap over Patil at the back, and it was 3 seconds. It's coming down 2.8, 2.7 seconds as they'll continue to lap, and the Dalton Community Car dives straight into the pit lane. An instant between 75 and 72. I think that was the one that we saw down into Villeneuve. Of course, the 75 being the Yazheed Richard Mille car that was going side by side and then spinning out. That would have been the 72 Red Martin Esports red car, Samira Brahimi behind the wheel in that one. That will be discussed post-race, which I think fair enough to get all the facts in line. Sometimes race control can delay it, and we'll decide then.
Yeah, this is quite an important, well, not an important moment, but quite a symbolic moment as to where we're at of this race. I know that that 42 car has made a pit stop, but Stapleford coming up to the back of that car to lap them. That is how costly this 15-second penalty is going to be. You shouldn't be losing a lap in the pit stops, especially as such a front-running car. But that 15-second penalty has set them back so far that you can see them in the foreground of that shot there, nearly getting overtaken. This is the part of the race, of course, where things just do go a little bit crazy, and we're not quite sure where everybody is, but we'll see, of course, when it all shakes out, where everybody kind of is. But still got more than 6 minutes left of this pit stop window now, and I can imagine that Stapleford will be making good use of that since he's in clean air. Why would he come in at this stage?
I think we're ever sure as to what position people are in, to be perfectly honest, Ewan. I think we have a hard time of it. Of course, Mike Noble either way trying to get past Kamenev at the moment. Probably won't feel he needs to get on with this move as well, because Kamenev has that 15-second time penalty. In fact, both Kamenev and Valentin Barriev should probably drop behind the FFS racing car. There is Samira Brahimi, of course, in that number 72, the one that's under investigation, that will be dealt with post-race. Race control will kind of having this, that they are encouraged to, if they're not sure on instant, if they're taking too long on a type penalty, they're not really 100% sure as to which way it should go to deal with it post-race. Either way, the 75 Brahimi, who had a bit of an issue there with the 111 of Lindhorst, that car, the 111, given a 10-second time penalty. So race control have been busy in the opening half an hour of this race here at Imola. And the racetrack has been very busy indeed with the amount of side-by-side action that we've seen. We've not been short of action, have we?
No, we certainly haven't in the first half an hour of this race. And yeah, the amount of penalties does kind of attest to that, of course, because of the amount of incidents. But it can't exactly come as too big of a surprise to anybody at a circuit like this. It is very tricky indeed to go side-by-side, but obviously they're going to attempt to. You're not just going to sit in your position all day long and kind of finish where you started, because that would be a bit dull. And also they need the points and they need the positions, so obviously they're going to go for it, and sometimes it doesn't come off. Unfortunately, we have seen that a few times here so far. But yeah, the action is going to continue. It's really going to kick off again, I feel, when the pit stop window closes, or at least the importance of which these battles are kind of going to heighten again, because kind of everybody's going to be back together at front. I can't see that battle for second really spreading out too much. I know it looks like it at the moment, but that's because half of them have come in.
I still think we're going to get a tight battle for second. I just don't really know for certainty who it's going to be between. Sholobov, who's running in that second position at the moment, comes into the pit lane. Nick Hoban does indeed continue. Of course, someone who is continuing in no shock to anyone, will probably continue for the next 4 minutes, or as late into the pit window as they can go, is our race leader, Robbie Stapleford, who has been well in control. One of the latest signings, to be fair, both of them, in that number 62 BMW G2 Esports car. Typically, obviously, over the last year and more, we typically associate, there's a bit of traffic here. There's a little bit too much traffic, a little bit of a tap on the rear end as well, as Nick Hoban just trying to get around some of that traffic, causing a little bit of problems. But yeah, we typically associate, before the switch, BMW G2 Esports with Arthur Camera, with Niels Nyox, with Gregor Schill. Those three, they're typically the three behind the wheel of that car. Of course, they've moved on. They've gone to BS Competition. All three of them have left, and so BMW G2 Esports have had that sort of hole to fill. They've got Charlie Croston, who was ex-Team Fordzilla, and then, of course, Robbie Stapleford, who's the best team in sim racing of all time, Zancho SimSport Rocket represent. But obviously moving over there and fitting in so well. They've also taken the race engineering side as well. They've got Nick Dealey behind the scenes running things strategy-wise with Robert Stepford. They're a fantastic group they've got there now, and looking to attack and find their form, which it seems they're very much in control of right now.
Yeah, they are certainly in control of their own destiny. I mean, they have obviously been helped by the stuff going on around them, as Stepford does indeed come in the pit lane right now, but that doesn't kind of take away anything from the pace that Stableford has shown in that BMW to be able to run away at the front of the field. And so yeah, even without those battles, I do feel like they would have a fairly comfortable lead at this stage. It's all about bringing it home, really, for the second half of this race, as some of the leaders do now indeed come in. Stableford and Heuben are both in. So we wait for the last 8 cars now to make their final pit stop. It's going to have to be the next lap as well, because we're slowly running out of time here in this pit stop window.
Yeah, there isn't the most. They're really coming on to their final lap to dive into pit lane. I don't think they'll have enough time to get any further round. The car 154, the GTWR RHG Academy black car, that has received a 5-second time penalty. Chris Hartveld's just taken over from Alexandra Herbignan. So that car, a bit of aggressive on the racing, on the defence. So kind of makes sense that you get a penalty for that. You know, just more of that's a lighter slap on the wrist. It's only 5 seconds, and that'll be added obviously post race. Any penalties from this point on will be added once they've crossed the finish line. As Charlie Crossland takes over from the BMW G2 Esports car. That is not an easy position to take over, by the way, because you've got all the pressure of your teammates' great work on your shoulders.
Yeah, that is true. It is a daunting prospect, but he does have a very big margin to. We cut to him there as Murtaugh was just making his way out of the final corner, and Crossland was on his way down to the first turn. So yeah, he's got a big lead. But you're right, pressure is going to be on his shoulders here to just convert. But I'm sure he'll be more than capable of doing so. Nearly 15 seconds of a margin is more than enough to nurse till the end of the race, especially with only 25 minutes left.
Yeah, like I said, we're running out of time, running out of those kind of final opportunities. For those, a warning for car 154. We've spoken about them getting that 5-second time penalty. They're now getting a warning also. That's obviously going towards Chris Hartveld or whoever was behind the wheel at the time. Obviously, the penalties, whilst they're assigned to the car, they are assigned or more so focused towards the driver. So obviously, it's your licence points which you're kind of adding to, not the cars. Yes, I'm going to go into a completely different train of thought there, so I'm going to jump straight off of that as we're seeing this battle. Spears, who's jumped in behind that Williams Esports car, this car that's fighting for the championship, has a lot of pressure on his shoulders. Currently running around in 12th spot, but you've got Yegor Ogrodnikov in the car behind. You've got one of the the Clash cars. You've got one of the Yaz heats. It's a pretty tricky little 5-way fight here, and I wouldn't necessarily want to be in his boots right now.
No, I wouldn't really want to be there either, because or any car in this battle, to be quite honest, because it is very high intensity at the moment, but especially at the front, where you're defending from 4 cars all at once. It's going to be very difficult for Ogrodnikov to do anything into turn 1. You would imagine from here, with the same car as the driver in front, and Slipstream not doing much for him right now, just trying to get closer, but not really being successful. Though a little bit wide into turn 1 there, and there could be an opportunity, although we've seen how moves into the Villeneuve chicane have gone in the past. Not decent run, but nowhere near close enough to be making a move, and so we'll stay behind once more in this battle for what is turning out to be 6th position. All of the those who had penalties all shaking themselves out now, so this is for a little bit of a higher position than it otherwise might have been.
Got the Clash car at the inside there, a little bit of contact. That was just a little bit too far from Malinovsky, and coming through the middle as well, the number 42 of Mikhail Baikov. And there was a touch of wheels there, just trying to find the gap, making it 3 wide, going up into Piratella now. And they'll all head back into single file. Going around the outside though, could have been fantastic from Malinovsky. Managed to get it done on St. Pedri, but a little bit dicey between the lot. Again, they can't take too many risks. The 42 involved in the championship, the Williams Esports car, the championship leaders. When it comes to points with drop scores included, it's 150 points for Williams Esports. That 41 that sat directly behind them of Yegor Ogrodnikov, they are 24 points back on the championship, so might kind of very much need to get on with this a little bit and get past and start outscoring that Williams Esports car.
Yeah, certainly does. It all boils down to that penalty that we saw, really. That incident at the Villeneuve chicane, of course, has really set them back. They look like they were going to gain points. After all, they might end up losing them. I can't honestly see them in just 23 minutes. I can't see Bykov making his way through 3 cars to get to the Williams Esports car, unless, of course, he gets help from his teammate here. There's the other SimWare.Pro car on the outside line now of the Mercedes, but not able to do it into the Tamburello chicane, and so stays behind once more. A nice smoother exit into the next chicane, always a possibility, but always very difficult. So yeah, you can just see how long you have to size up these moves for. It's going to be a very long time before Bykov gets anywhere near this Williams car, unless something goes wrong for somebody up front here.
Got to remember that the 2 SimWare.Pro by Vides on corrected point scores with the drop scores included. They are both on the same points, 126 points apiece for the 42 and the 41, as Ogorokov goes on the attack of Harry Spears once again up towards Piratella. I think that Williams Esports car is feeling the pressure right now. They might even be out of the top 10 reverse grid. The reason why I say that is there's 22 minutes left to go, and it is not looking comfortable. You've got James Parker as well closing in. You've got Felix Arndt as well in the number 77 Prime E racing car. At the moment, this battle, 6th through 10th, you've got Spears, you've got Ogorokov, Malinovsky, you've also got Zempedri and Bykov, this 5, and Parker is officially a part of the battle, and no one wants to finish in 11th position right now. You don't want to be that first car outside of the reverse grid for the second race. It'd make the next hour of racing a lot harder for you, but Spears is really not looking comfortable right now, and I genuinely feel for him.
Yeah, it's going to be very tough, but you can't obviously win a championship without having tough races like this one, and so this is certainly going to be one of those. Holding on to the top 10 here, I think, is the biggest priority, but I also feel like once one car goes through, there could be a whole train of them here for Williams Esports. Another defensive line into Tamburello, but another failed attempt from Ogorokov. But what else can he do at this stage? We're going to see that lap after lap after lap, I feel, in the final 20 minutes of this race, and they're not going to be able to get anywhere. However, as I said, once the 80 gets sent offline, these guys are so close that they're all going to come through.
The problem is that you might irritate the car behind. That is a bit of a problem, is that if you are going to irritate that car behind, then they might do something a bit more brash in the final sort of 5 minutes of the race, and that can cost you a lot more. It's kind of those sort of battles that you're always playing, always trying to figure your way around. Right now, Spears, whilst yes, maybe not looking the most comfortable, the fastest of this group, is looking in control. I think that is the critical thing, and that's what needs to be going through your mind when you're defending from cars behind like this, lap after lap after lap. You just need to make sure, tell yourself all the time, just hit the apex, make sure you don't overrun the braking zone, make sure you're not opening an opportunity, and then let them try and fight behind. Ogorokov having to defend a little bit from Malinovsky, who will obviously want to get on with it himself as they run over the curbs at Variante Alta. Maybe a little bit too slow there from Ogorokov as we head down towards Ravatsa.
It was another kind of half-hearted effort. Well, it wasn't really an effort, just kind of showing the nose, moving in the mirrors ever so slightly. But this is going to be the problem for Ogorokov and anybody really looking to make a move in this train, is that you've got cars right behind you looking to pounce on any mistake that you might make. And that could all play into the hands of Williams Esports, as we explain, obviously. It could all help them out, but also the fact that they're at the front means they can get shuffled to the back in the space of one lap. So it's pros and cons to all of the positions. I guess the only position they're only close to is the race leader, of course. But in this battle, there is no good place to be. In all honesty, I don't fancy being here. In all honesty, it just doesn't look nice, does it? It doesn't look comfortable, especially when you're deep into a championship at this stage, as these boys are.
This is why we need to get you behind the wheel of the car, mate. I mean, me and you will team up for a championship one time. I've never seen. I've commentated with you the last 3-4 years, maybe 3 years at least. I've never seen you drive anything ever. We need to change that. We need to change that, young man. Either way, we'll focus on this battle right now, as Harry Spears is ahead of Ogorokov, Malinovsky, and Pedri and Bykov, and that battle is still going to continue once again. Spears off Aqua Minerale, feeling that pressure. Ogorokov's looking.
He is. He's been doing this time after time, and it's a classic tactic, really, to kind of throw your opponent off, just get in the mirrors a little bit, try and fish around for any little mistake maybe, or indeed a bit of an opening to try and go through, but they're so few and far between here that it's doing very little to stir the Williams Esports Mercedes just up in front. Is the exit off of Ravazza good enough this time? Well, it's not bad, but once again he's going to get to just about to the back of it. He's going to make the 80 defend, but he's not going to get to nearly far enough alongside to make a move, especially not with this amount of time remaining. There might be moves a little bit further back though.
We'll see if Baikov can get past Pedri in that Clash Racing car, looking to the inside, just ahead. There was the little look there from Ogorognikov. I've got to say, Spears is doing a brilliant job. There's a lot of pressure on the rear end from Ogorognikov, but like I say, focusing on the critical parts of the race. Where do you need to be good? You don't need to, honestly, you don't need to be good everywhere, because there are places where you just can't move. This section, yes, you can kind of make that move, but not really. As long as you're getting through Tamburello okay, as long as you're getting through Villeneuve okay, then you should be fine. It's about making sure that you're nailing the exits of places like Ravazza, of Aqua Minerale, and then getting Variante Alta right. As long as you're getting those smaller parts of the racetrack okay, and quite decent, that's where you're keeping the car behind. You don't need to be perfect everywhere, you just need to be very damn good, which when you say that, it's like, oh, okay, this is pretty tricky. I mean, I've had to do my fair share of defensive, like keeping trains behind for a while, mostly because I'm quite bad and I'm only put at the front of the trains in a reverse grid race, so I've had to deal with it a fair amount. But it's tricky, but you have to kind of lower the track into its base components rather than thinking about each complete lap.
I do see what you mean, but you're still not selling it to me. It still does look very hard. For Spears here. Yeah, it's just I think this corner really is the key. Getting Ravazza right, and you're just about set really, if on a normal lap, unless your opponent does something spectacular. Ogorognikov does look like he's had a better final corner this time, and it was a terrible one for Malinovsky just behind, so he's under pressure as well.
Yeah, is Pedri going to be able to get through? Here comes Ogorognikov then, getting to the outside. Could this be the opportunity for the SimWare.Pro by Vides number 41? He's there, he's alongside Spears in deep, space given, and somehow that Williams Esports holds on side by side. Behind though, that is Pedri getting past Malinovsky. James Parker into the mix as well. And there's the squeeze from Malinovsky, straight over to one side of the track, just keeping Baikov at bay. And James Parker has got through into the top 10 in that FFS racing car. Go on, lad. But also, this is madness.
That was absolute madness there. Malinovsky didn't quite make the move on Pedri there. He got displaced through the first Tamburello chicane, of course. Then we saw Baikov try and come through, but was blocked by the Mercedes, allowing Parker to go through. Very nice indeed, very nice opportunistic driving from the FFS Racing driver. And so into the top 10. That's such an important battle for Baikov and the championship for SimWare.Pro. They have to be in the top 10. They have to benefit from that reverse grid.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure Baikov might be shouting the team name of James Parker out a few times after that little move there, because that was a little bit tricky, a little bit dicey. But I've got to feel a little bit for Baikov there. He did get squeezed by Malinovsky quite a bit on the run down into Villeneuve. I wonder if race control will say anything on that schedule, or whether it's just left as hard racing. They obviously gave a 5-second time penalty earlier on for aggressive driving. We didn't really see what that was, going towards Chris Hartveld and Alexander Herbenau in the GTWR RHG Academy car. But either way, focusing on the positives, focusing on this battle, Pedri has closed right in on Igor Ogorognikov, who's right on the rear end once again. This happened last time for the Williams Esports car. Let's see if the SimWare.Pro can get around the outside this time into the braking zone once again, but this time looking a little bit more progress. And it's that contact, and Williams Esports have been sent around by Igor Ogorognikov. That is the Clash Racing car who's got straight through now into 6th place. That was always going to happen when racing that hard. You can see in the background Williams Esports have rejoined, but they've got Jardine Community to think about as well. What do you think of that?
Well, yeah, it's probably one we're going to get to see again, and going to have to, because it was certainly a very controversial incident, certainly going to have a big bearing on this championship as well, as James Parker gets through on Ogorognikov again. But let's see from the above shot. Spears sends it into the first pot.
It's too
over
deep
the curve for Ogorognikov. He just does lose it, doesn't he? Through the first part of through the first turn. That he's still going at it here with James Parker still side by side to Aqua Minerale, and it's another bit of contact on this lap. Through goes Bykov and bouncing across the curves. My goodness me, this battle has all split apart now. It's all got very messy, and there's going to be a few very unhappy drivers in this group now. A few tempers starting to fray.
Red mist coming in there from Igor Ogrognikov. I've commentated on him a fair while, and he does need to rein it in just a little bit in this. That is way too much contact. The thing down at Tamburello, I'll say it, I think as much as it was rough, it was a very innocent mistake. He was trying to give plenty of room and then just overdid it a little bit. So easy to do. That is an innocent one. Little bit of contact there with James Parker, then not a great rejoin, we'll have to say that. But either way, a dicey lap, not a very good one from Ogrognikov, unfortunately, just getting right involved in the mix, but now moved down the order. Race control suddenly got an awful lot to look over as James Parker closing in here on Felix Arndt, getting to the outside, getting squeezed. Ogrognikov finds his way through and makes contact, and there we go. That's what we're saying about with the red mist. And the Jardier community car has just come through to potentially start fighting for a top 10. My goodness, what is happening in this race? Ogrognikov does need to breathe, needs to calm down right now.
Yeah, I do agree. The incident with the Williams Esports car was an innocent mistake. These sausage curbs are providing big problems and sending cars straight into the side of others. But certainly that one there with James Parker was very opportunistic. It wasn't really ever going to work there. You wouldn't say. So he might find himself with a penalty or two in the final moments of this race. But, because of course he'll be added to his race time at this stage. But yeah, I mean, a few too many incidents over the last few laps. Entertaining battle, and then unfortunately it's all gone a little bit wrong for a few of these guys, and especially championship defining for the Williams Esports team. They're going to lose quite a lot of points to the 42 here, and indeed the 41 now as well.
Which is a shame, because 10 minutes ago, genuinely, I was thinking that Williams Esports is going to finish way outside the top 10. I didn't think Spears had it, but he had the defence. He was keeping it right there. This is looking to the inside. Oh, I get it. You've already committed on the brakes, but that is not great from Ogrogov. That is exactly what we're kind of saying, is that the red mist, when you've had a couple of incidents and boom, to have 2 laps where you've made contact with 3-4 different cars, regardless of whether it's your fault or not, that is unacceptable. So I think, yeah, there's going to be something going the way of the number 41. Like I say, it's battling for the championship as well as the Williams Esports car, as well as the number 42. That is not going to go down very well. And especially when it comes to this championship picking up licence points, is that if he picks up a certain amount of licence points in a short period of time, and we've already had a DQ today, courtesy of breaching 4.5 licence points, which I don't think that car's in breaching of in this race, but still, it could cause penalties later on. Here goes around the outside then. James Parker just tried to get that Jardier community car at bay, a little bit of a hip check off of the corner, just to make sure that Maczkowski holds position in that number 44. And that one will go down particularly well for the 1-2-3.
No, not really. Not quite enough space given on the outside of toes. You would imagine Parker straight on it at the top of Piratella. Outside line to Acqua Minerale isn't going to work, but maybe a switch back into the right-hander, that would be brave. And he was even given the room by Maczkowski, rather bizarrely, and so he's going to be able to go for it now at the Variante Alta. Don't often see side-by-side up into here, and there is a reason for that. We'll see if they both dive it deep into the corner. They don't. Maczkowski gives that one up, thankfully, although he comes back at him again into the final 2 corners.
Yeah, that was a little bit too deep there from James Parker, taking a bit too much of the curb, but now he has to worry once again, not just about Maczkowski, but also Volmuth, who's closing in the background. There's the dive to the inside, going around the outside. James Parker getting a little bit wrestled out wide by the big Bentley as well, and his fellow Aston Martin also might find his way through. Bad exits for the pair of them, and that Merc, that Williams Esports Merc, is closing in more and more and more once again to maybe start battling for 11th position. Who knows what will happen? That's way not the right line from Volmuth, and here comes Parker around the outside coming into Tamburello, the side-by-side in those Aston Martins, maybe up to 3 wide as there's a squeeze for the Jardier community car, and Parker sends it in. No position switches just yet.
Looking for 3 wide there, but it's far too narrow for that, just into Tamburello, although Parker not giving this one up just yet. Another inside move at the Villeneuve chicane. Is he going to pay off this time? Bounce across the curves into the side of the car alongside, and he gets shoved out wide, and he's going to lose 2 places because of his attempt to make 1.
Oh, and there's Harry Spears around the outside as well of the FFS racing car. Might actually make them stick. That'd be a superb move from Spears, and the super sub I think might have just got there. He's still alongside, but it's not going to work running up towards Piratella, but definitely a good effort to try and take advantage of the situation that James Parker forced upon himself realistically by trying to force that move on Machkowski. I think he might feel a little bit hard done by in the battle, but for Williams Esports this has not been a good day, and to be perfectly honest, I feel really bad for them. Like I don't feel there's been any real issues, any mistakes that they've really made. Spears did a great job over the first part of his stint, and unfortunately they've been dealt a very bad deck.
They have been dealt a tough hand here, certainly, but I think they've just got to focus here for the last 8 minutes or so, get as many points as you can as possible. The reverse grid top 10 out the window, forget about that, just try and pick up as many points as possible, because every point is going to be crucial. They've already dropped quite a heftily bad round at Zandvoort, as 23rd and a 16th on that day. That was a really poor round for them, so they're not going to be able to drop these points. You would imagine they're going to be taking these through with their tally, while Bykov is going to be taking a few more points through, but the gap between 8th and 14th in terms of points is a lot bigger than it is between 8th and 11th.
Well, the first penalty to be dished out then to Igor Rognikov. It's a 10-second time penalty to be dished out, which will be handed post-race, which will move him outside of the top 10 as things stand. So as much as Williams Esports will have their issues with what's gone on, that number 41 is also not looking likely to finish inside the top 10 either, so they'll be outside the reverse grid draw for the next race as well. Still 7 minutes left to go, and still a couple of incidents as well under investigation from the number 41, so things could get worse for the Simware.pro by Vides. This is the highest battle that we have that's this close, and it is a pretty tight one. Of course, Machkowski keeping Vormuth at bay, keeping Parker at bay. Spears as well now closing, or rather dropping back off of the back of this train as Vormuth takes way too much curb at Aqua Minerale. It's just constantly kicking off.
It is constantly kicking off now. These battles outside the top 10. We started with the battle for second in the first half of this race, and it was for about 6th or 7th, and now we're all the way back outside of the top 10 because of these fights allowing people from further behind to catch on. But it certainly looks like Williams Esports, after coming under a little bit of pressure from the 81, is dropping back a little bit now, struggling to keep at the pace of these three, although James Parker does look like, in my opinion, the fastest in this group. He's been making moves very nicely, I have to say, throughout this race, although is now struggling to really or struggle with bad luck, really, if that's possible. He's just had a lot of bad luck this race, and he's going to be possibly outside the top 10 as a result, which is really less than he deserves, to be honest.
Still 6 minutes left to go. Well, 5.5 minutes left to go. Realistically, about 4 laps left to run here in the first race of the Coach Dave Super Sprint at Imola. The 7th race of our season, as we're really approaching the end of things now. Parker, yes, it would be very unlucky, but if he makes it past these two, then it's almost a guaranteed top 10 as well, because of course, Igor Ognikov's 10-second time penalty that might well be added to. So Parker's really got to focus on trying to get past his fellow Aston Martin and the Red Welton Esports car, Maximilian Vormuth, but then also has to focus on getting past Machkowski, which was not easy. I don't know if Machkowski is also under investigation as well for some of the defensive moves there from or trying to keep Parker at bay, but either way it was a feisty battle of fisticuffs, a little bit too deep from the pair of them, and this could be the opportunity for the FFS Racing car to come through, but I just don't think that braking zone at Alta is long enough.
No, it's not really, it's not a great overtaking opportunity. You can see the massive curves on the inside of that chicane there. It's quite tight chicane, and so you're going to do well to get through there. I know earlier it was attempted, but yeah, it's not really an overtaking place. Parker's going to have a go into Tamburello, I feel, if he wants to get this top 10. Of course, 11th place in this race would effectively be a top 10 because of Igor Rodnikov's penalty. But Parker hasn't really got the exit, hasn't at all got the exit he needs off of that final corner to go anywhere here. So it's another lap of waiting for him with 4 minutes to go.
It's going to be a tricky one, as leading at the moment someone who isn't having a bad day right now. Charlie Crossland as well, rolling around at the moment at the front of the field and not really worrying about it. By the way, whilst we're speaking of this, it's not been dished out in game just that, but you can see there 2 extra 10-second time penalties for the number 41. Said that red mist really did hit, and it certainly did. Obviously making a couple of bits of contact with the FFS racing car. Like you said about the poor luck went away, you can see it there. A 30-second time penalty. It also means that Ogrodnikov has breached his licence point, which means that we're making it 3 licence points from this. So Ogrodnikov will get a penalty, I believe, for the next race, and it comes into it turns into a drive-through here. Basically, what we're saying is really bad moment there from Igor Ogrodnikov.
Yeah, so we're saying he's got a drive-through to add on to those 30 seconds.
My goodness.
At the end. So that is going to set him back so far in this race, probably down towards the back end of the field like we're seeing here. This is a wonderful battle as well. There is battles all over this circuit at the moment, all up and down the field, and this being one of them. For 24th at the moment, Chris Hartberg was leading at the start of the lap, and he's all the way down to the back of this group within half a lap. Just
to clarify, by the way, the 41. So yes, it's got the drive-through penalty. It then also has the 30-second time penalty because of the instant points that Igor Ogrodnikov has breached. As we'll see a little bit of dicey racing back here. Because of that, also has a quali ban for our season finale at Bathurst. So I think in 2 laps, you can essentially say that that championship is now over from Igor Ogrodnikov. That's done. The 41. That, for me, you can't come back from it. Not from where they're going to be starting in the next race, and then from what's going to happen at Bathurst as well. That's them, as near as makes no difference, sorted. And unfortunately, you can sit there and be like, there is only one person that can be blamed in that. Unfortunately, it's just how it is.
Yeah, that is certainly going to see them out of contention, you would imagine. They're not going to get many points from this race. They'll do well to score many from the next one, and indeed the first race at Bathurst. So their main rivals are going to be up the road and gaining points once more, which is going to be pretty annoying to the 41 SimRare.pro team. But of course they do still have a car in contention. Bykov gaining points here in this race by the looks of things in 8th right now. See where the Williams car is going to finish. Probably 13th by the looks of things. Is they're nowhere near these 3. Doesn't seem to have the pace of these 3 at the moment as they continue.
Maximilian Vollmuth has got a drive-through penalty. That's not come from race control. That is a track limit violation penalty. So that's going to drop him behind Harry Spears as well. So there's going to be all change in this as James Parker, with 1 lap to go, closing in now on the Jardier community car. Might be 1, might actually be 2, depending on where the 62 is in comparison to these. The 62 is coming around Tozer now. You can see Charlie Crossland, 45 seconds left. So I think they're going to have 1 more lap left to go for James Parker to potentially rescue a top 10 as he's right on the rear end, and Ogrodnikov's come into the pit lane for a drive-through. Crazy.
He has. He's dropping down the now. Vollmuth hasn't, and this is the last lap of the race now, so not sure what they're going to do about that, but he's certainly not going to be inside the top 10. James Parker's going to throw everything at this, although he has run out of turn 1s to make this move now. He's going to throw everything, absolutely everything, at this one, because of course it is the elusive 10th position and that reverse grid. But the man starting in 10th for the next race is going to be Charlie Crossland, because he's taking a very comfortable win.
Well, here he is then, Charlie Crossland down towards the final corner. 1 more to tick off. And what a day it has been. We've had 5 different manufacturers win in the Coach Dave Super Sprint, and we can officially make that 6. BMW on top here at Imola for BMW G2 Esports. Charlie Crossland and Robbie Stapleford dominant all day. They barely have seen anyone else after the first couple of laps, with the exception of the odd bit of back markerage they've had to deal with. Complete perfection for the number 62. Out of the final corner as well, Murdasov will come across the line in the 919 SMP Racing Esports car. The car that was victorious in that second race at Barcelona. RHG Esports and Capoccia will cross the line in 3rd, and then the 888 SMP Racing car as well across the line. 383 Jan Willem van Omen as well. Decent race there from the Dalkin Community car. Unfortunately weren't able to take more from the race, but either way they were dished with a pretty decent position. And here comes that battle for 10th place. Drag race to the line. I think it is going to go the way though of Machkovsky. That was super close coming through the final corner into the slipstream. It's not going to be enough. The Bentley's powerful enough, and the Jardier community car will come across the line in an 10th spot, denying the FFS racing car. That's a bit of a shame.
It is a shame for the 1-2-3 team, really. They did deserve to get that top 10 and the pole for the next race, but unfortunately it wasn't to be for them. As I said, Parker was going to throw everything at that, and he did, into the final corners there. Which it was good to see him have a go, of course, but it wasn't meant to be. So it's going to be another little bit of a struggling race, really. But maybe with obviously that BMW G2 esports car in front of him this time, he can maybe follow through that BMW on a few of these moves early on in this second race.
I mean, based on their speed right now, to be perfectly honest, I wouldn't necessarily rule out that BMW G2 esports car to doing something pretty magical. But then again, we were thinking the same thing from the Veloce car at Barcelona as well. They were so dominant in the first race, and then we didn't really see much out of them in the second. And then obviously they got involved in various incidents and whatnot as well. But either way, complete dominance from BMW G2 esports. Do you think around here, do you think they can maybe march their way up and maybe even get 2 podiums, maybe even do the double? They seem to have place for it.
Yeah, it's very tricky. I mean, a podium certainly very possible. We've seen that in the past. We saw that it happened to 2 teams last time out. Williams and SimWare.pro both managed 2 podiums in one race. But in terms of 2 wins, very difficult to see BMW G2 esports managing that, really. It's difficult to pass through here, and we haven't seen how good that BMW is in terms of being able to get through here. You know, it could be a very tentative. I'll use the example in F1 of Bottas. Can be very quick if he starts at the front, but hopeless from starting from the back. So I'm not saying they're going to be hopeless starting from 10th, but you know, we could see a similar situation. How is that BMW going to be overtaking? It did look like it had quite good straight line speed, so I do have hopes for them. But let's see. Only time will tell.
Well, I think after we've had that race, we should probably catch up with the team as well. I think we'll start with the traitor. Of course, Robbie Stapleford will be jumping in here with us. Talk to us about the start of the race. You seemed completely dominant, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah, it was pretty domination, weren't it? Just got a good start with the Bentley and made a gap, and then slowly just started to pull away and give Charlie an easy job to just cruise along for the last 25 minutes.
Now, obviously, you've raced. We know that you've raced in the McLaren quite a lot in the recent past. Now jumping over with the BMW. How are you finding this BMW? Have you been adapting to it all season, and you're finally finding your rhythm, or is it just a case that it matches really, really nicely to the circuit here at Imola?
I'm adapted to the BMW really well, to be fair, and I think this car around Imola just a really good match. It takes the curbs like they're nothing, and it's got really good aero for the curbs, so I think this car around this track's just really good.
Do you think the championship's still potentially there? It's still on, considering some of the top in the championship had quite a lot of issues in that race?
I would want to hope so. Let's not jinx it too early there.
We'll speak to Charlie as well. Charlie, obviously, jumping into the car after a pretty dominant performance from your teammate Robbie Stapleford in the first part of that race. Was there extra pressure on your shoulders then, or was it actually kind of comfortable to jump in and have such a large lead?
I wish I had more races like it. Yeah, it was fun because I had nothing to do. I prefer more races like that than anything.
Any back marker we've seen? Like obviously there was a fair few back markers kind of naturally to be expected when you're in such a strong position. Was there any of that was kind of causing you a little bit of frustration, a little bit of bother late in that race?
No, well, we had a 20-25 second gap, so we could allow the back markers to battle for the last few laps. So it was fine.
What do you think's possible in this second race, knowing it is quite difficult to overtake here at Imola? Where do you think the opportunity is going to come? What do you think you can get from the second race?
Well, hopefully we don't get taken out for like the 4th time in a row. But yeah, it's just if people hit us, that's really what it's down to.
Well, we'll keep our fingers crossed for you, and we'll let you get back to it, of course. And best of luck for the second race.
Thank you.
Cheers.
And Ewan, I mean, what do we think? What do we think they can get from this one? I mean, knowing their pace and they seem very calm, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah, I mean, have you ever heard any less excited race winners?
I know.
Because I think it's because they knew they were winning for such a long time that the kind of excitement of knowing you're going to win is dissipated half an hour ago, to be honest. So you know, not blaming them because they've got another race to do right now. They can't afford to just let themselves go completely and celebrate their race when they've got a job to do in a moment's time. But also, that was an easy, in quote marks, an easy win, really, for them. They had a very big lead, but where can they get to in this next race? As I said, I think it's going to be a podium for them. We've seen other teams manage that in the past. We've never seen anybody take 2 race wins in one day. We've never seen anybody take two race wins in at all this season. So is today going to be the day? I feel like the chances are going up by the week, obviously, by the race of a repeat race winner, but it's still not happening. 7 races in.
Which is mad to have 7 different race winners on the bounce, but I don't know. I can see it. The thing is, I can think of quite a lot of teams out there that are realistically potential to take that extra race victory to become our 8th different race winner. But there's obviously still plenty of the Jardier community car that will be starting up from pole position. Obviously, they had a race win in the first round there. Strong candidates for this. The only issue that we've really got with that BMW is that we never saw it race people. We saw them lead from the front, and we don't know what that car is like in the pack. And we know the pack running down into Tamburello and into Villeneuve here is going to be pretty thick indeed. With the top 10 reversed and such, it can get a little bit feisty out there. They were saying that they've got taken out in quite a few of the other races this season, and they'll genuinely be pretty anxious rolling through.
They will be very anxious. Obviously, getting through lap 1 is a much different story when you're starting in 10th position compared to starting from the pole. So that will be something to factor in as well. If they get through the first lap cleanly, then obviously they've got every chance of getting into the podium. Their pace does seem to be good. But as you said, what is their car going to be like in the traffic? I do believe, as I said earlier, that their straight line speed is going to be all right because of the way they were able to accelerate away from the Mercedes behind, and the Bentleys indeed. Behind early on in that race. Obviously, Novikov gave it a good go into the first turn, despite a better reaction actually from the man who started 2nd position in that first race. Still got beaten to turn 1, and I think that BMW's power is going to help them certainly. But they're obviously going to run up against the same problems that everybody else has had overtaking.
You said you wouldn't take the BMW. What car would you take, by the way?
Oh, I
didn't ask you at the time.
Since I've not actually driven any of these cars, or
you
ever
can only
played
go on
HGC,
looks.
I can only go on looks. I only said I don't want the BMW because it looks like that. To be honest, I do commend the G2 Esports team for hiding the front grille with the black livery. But other than that, yeah, no, it's well. I don't work for BMW in any way, so I can say that.
Yeah, see, this is the thing is that I do have broadcasts with BMW where I still rip into the M4, so it's fine.
I'll continue ripping into them at least for the moment, but because I don't like it. The Z4 will be the peak of.
Don't start with the Z4, man.
Sorry, but it just is.
No, I'm not about that Z4. The thing is with the M4 is that I saw one in the flesh a couple of weeks ago, of course, one racing in British GT now, and I was like, oh, okay, it does look a little bit less repulsive in real life.
Really?
Yeah, no, I was all right with it. The one that I had an issue with was when I was driving home. I obviously pulled off into the services to have a bit of a breather, and parked directly behind me was a road version of the M4, which I hate more than the race version, but it's fine. It was in like Valentino Rossi yellow though, and it was wow, that's strong. That's too much for me. Either way, whilst we're here waffling on, waiting for the second race to get ready, there are other things to get ready for here in a SimGrid. The Coach Dave Time Attack, starting on the 2nd to the 8th of May. It's a $5 entry into it, but you do the 3 qualifying rounds, you get yourselves into that broadcasted finale. It's something very different, not a race where we're talking time attack. It's qualifying. It's about who can be the fastest driver, all in the Audi R8 LMS Evo. A nice little light something for some people to attack, to something for some people to give a go. I think I'm all for it, just to see something slightly different and see something which is about outright speed and the excitement of that, rather than the wheel-to-wheel action. There's excitement on both sides of it. And of course, speaking of Coach Dave stuff, can't forget this weekend on Saturday, the Coach Dave 1000 here at Imola, which, I mean, it's a great track to go racing on. We've seen some great racing on it to basically do it for what's going to be around 6 hours. I'm all for it. I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be a pretty dicey affair in that as well, especially considering what we've seen today.
Yeah, it's going to be very difficult for everybody. I feel like, if that race had continued on, obviously we saw a lot of the battles, but all of the battling created such huge gaps in this field. How are they going to stitch themselves up throughout a longer race? Are those gaps going to come back? How important? I have a feeling that qualifying session is going to be one of, if not the most important, of the Coach Dave 1000 season. So that's going to be one to tune in for right from the very start. We're looking forward to that in only 2 days' time. And I'm sure a few of these guys in this race here will be racing in that one as well. But we're getting ready for race 2. As you can see, the shadow's a bit longer as we go racing in slightly evening time. Here, 6 p.m.
And the temperature is also a bit low, which will help with the requirement to do the race on the same set of tyres. Didn't think tyres made too much of a difference in the previous race. Obviously, they've changed. But still, I think should be okay. 26 degrees track temperature, and obviously only being an hour, but it's an hour of frantic racing. You can see the grid here. Of course, up at the top end of the field, the number 44, the Jardier community car that came into this round 7th in the championship. They took that race victory back in Brands Hatch, looking to take their second and become the first 2-time race winner of the Coach Dave Super Sprint. Phoenix aren't up there as well. The car that I'd actually be looking at the most is that number 42. They're looking to bounce back after a pretty disappointing first race, but they got that 15-second time penalty. They still came back from it. They still got inside the top 10. They still got an 8th place finish, and now Novikov will roll off from 3rd, and that would be the car that I'm looking at to potentially take a victory in this one. They're going to be hard to beat.
They are going to be hard to beat, and it would continue our record of having a different race winner. They would be nice to see. I think the most kind of the car that will be able to stop them, kind of most likely in this race, I feel, is going to be the 44 that will start from pole, the Jardier community car. It won't be Valentin Barrier starting the race. He will be ending it off. But that 44 is going to be difficult to beat, despite that BMW there going through the bottom of your screen, despite championship leaders, of course, as well. And the 42 lining up immediately behind. I think that 44 is the most likely candidate to ruin our 8 winners out of 8. It has a potential to happen in an hour's time.
I didn't even realise, by the way, that the Volante Racing Aztec Sim Sports car worked its way up the order quite a bit. It kind of started, I think it was around about 20th to 25th in the first race. They worked their way up there 14th. For this one, so clearly darted their way through, spotted them up quite high up the grid comparatively to where we saw them in race 1. So good effort. Obviously flew well under the radar. I'm sure plenty of teams also have that accolade as well as we'll get ready to begin the formation lap. I mean, I don't really know what to expect in this one, whether we are going to see that 8th different winner. I'd say that I know it's obviously the case as the season rolls on, it becomes less and less likely, because obviously more people have won, which means it's harder to see the 8th, 9th and 10th winners. I think we are going to see a repeat winner. I don't know who it's going to be. Obviously, you've got the Jardier community car up there that's leading the race. You've got Statsenko as well in that 449 car that sat in 4th position. And then, to be perfectly honest, I'm struggling to rule them out, but even the 62 is obviously going to start from 10th. They were so dominant in the previous race, and that car, at least from the start of the race, looked so raceable. I don't think they're out of this, like when it comes to talking about them for the race victory. Yes, 10th place, yes, Imola, but they're quick, very quick.
They are very quick. It really depends how this race is raced at the front of the field. If we see a similar situation to what we saw in race 1, then no chance, because what we saw in race 1 was the pole sitter getting a nice start, everybody scrapping for second like you wouldn't believe, and then the leader just gets away. Even they are not going to be able to close that gap, because you've got to remember they've got to fight their way through all of that first and then begin to close in on the margin. I don't think that's going to happen. However, if we see a Titanic scrap for first position where everybody stays in very close, and we see a really grouped up field heading towards the first pit stops of this race, the only pit stops of this race for the driver change, then it's very much on. It really does depend on the start of this Jardier community car. How good is it going to be? How far in front of the rest of the field are they going to be by the time we really see the BMW making some progress?
Yeah, I don't know what to expect in this race. I was going to ask you, obviously we've discussed race winners and stuff. Theme of the season so far has been race 1's been the calmer one, race 2's been, as I said, it's Crazy Town. What do you think? Are we getting calm or are we getting chaos in this one?
I think somewhere in between. I think there's going to be a bit more measure after the Bathurst pile-up we saw at the start of that race. But I don't think it's going to be... I mean, last time we got through Tamburello with absolutely nobody off the road, which was remarkable somewhat. People are out of position now, though, ever so slightly, so I do feel like somebody is going to come unstuck. I hope not, of course, but surely somebody is going to come unstuck, although Bathurst will be still in the back of their minds. They won't want to throw away everything, and there won't be cars everywhere, we hope, heading down towards Turn 1 this time.
One car to keep an eye on, of course, starting down in 28th position, the number 41 SimGrid Pro by Vides car, of course, the one that was in so many of the incidents late on in that race, getting a drive-through penalty, getting 3 time penalties as well late on. Very, very tricky afternoon for them ahead as we'll head into the second and final race here as the sun setting, the temperatures decreasing. We're at 25 degrees track temperature here Imola now. Considering when we started this session it was 26, it's going to get a little bit cooler. I think it'll probably hover around the 25 degree margin, but might well get a little bit blinding late on, though the sun's pretty high in the sky, so I doubt that very much. The IDA community team, they're looking for their second race victory of the season, starting from the pole position, the top 10 reverse. Maczkowski on that pole position, Arndt alongside Bykov, and then Malinovsky in your top 4. This is going to be a pretty tense affair as we'll get underway here at Imola once again in the Coach Dave Super Sprint. A great start from the Jardier community car, and Felix Arndt straight away into the slipstream of that car. Bit of a break there for the number 42 going around the outside. The Yazheat Pirelli car, little move there, might well be able to make that one stick as they've made it go through Tamburello for the first time. Jardier community well in control. The 42's dropping backwards though as they're under pressure from the Clash Racing car.
Yeah, that was a real block there, very aggressive block, it has to be said, to hold on to 5th place. Not a good start at all for Bykov, as we've got already pressure for the lead. Maczkowski and Arndt at very similar starts. They got off to an almost identical getaway in that start there, and they're continuing to fight now very hard indeed. Crossland hasn't been able to make any places off of this start for the BMW team, still 10th for them.
Yeah, that Yazheat Carlo tried making a little bit of progress. Malinovsky in the 449 up to 3rd, having to worry about Willem van Oomen in the 383 directly behind. Primary Racing though, they're looking in the prime position to go on the attack at the moment, sat in 2nd position and looking very comfortable to start already biting for that race lead. We've not seen Primary Racing be victorious in the Coach Dave Super Sprint thus far. Maybe they'll be our new victors in this race. Who knows what to expect, but either way Maczkowski has got a lot to worry about. The thing is, I think that Bentley straight line speed will be enough to keep that McLaren at bay, at least for now. It means it has to be a pretty bold move from Felix Arndt. We're just not sure where that's going to be.
Oh my word, that was very late and too late on the brakes from Malinovsky there. He's going to lose a heap of places. My goodness, down to 7th probably here as he gets shoved out. He's going to be really, really, really frustrated with himself after that, because that was an unforced error pretty much there, and he's really paid for that.
Back now with someone who he's had plenty of racing with when they were in the same team. Of course, Andrea Capoccia trying to attack. Pretty sure they were in the same team not too long ago as well. My memory not what it used to be, I'll say that. But Malinovsky either way through. Got to watch out in the background though, as it was Murdasov, I believe, getting down the inside of Crossland. Going into the first corner. Might not have actually been Murdasov, might have been one of their teammates, but either way a little bit dicey down into that first corner. It was indeed Murdasov who looked but has not got through. Clearly Crossland able to make 1 position up on this race start, up into 9th position, that BMW G2 Esports. At the moment though, the Jardier community car checking out for everyone else's FFS Racing, trying to attack on the run down towards Piratella.
Yeah, this is exactly the problem already forming. This battle for 3rd between Van Oomen and Bykov is really backing up the pack all the way back to 12th, but it's allowing the 2 leaders to get a big lead. 1 second and a half already after only 2 laps, as we see one of the Mercedes well out wide. I think that might have been Capoccia actually, who was previously behind Malinovsky, drops all the way down behind the BMW, even behind the FFS Racing car quite possibly. James Parker trying to move into the top 10, although can't quite do it.
Yeah, there was a little bit of a struggle there. I mean, it's so easy to do down into the likes of Aqua Minerale. Look at that towards the front, though. Bykov trying to get past Willem van Oomen, running down into the final corner, committed on the outside of Ravatsa at the first part, although getting shut out by the Dalkey community car. Nice work there from van Oomen, but little attempt there from Bykov. That was a little bit wide there, though, from the BMW G2 Esports car in the background, and Charlie Crosser might have to worry about Murdasov, who's just closing right in that slipstream, as we'll roll our way down into the first corner once again. Maczkowski leading by a second, as we'll take a look at the replay a bit further down. This is Jaroslav Hontik rolling through Aqua Minerale. There's a couple of cars, of course, rolling their way off on the exit onto that tarmac bit, and I think might well just be he got driven into there big time.
Oh, dearie me, yeah.
That was rough for Jaroslav Hontik. There was nothing really he could do there. He just got pushed into it.
The McLaren there certainly getting straight into the back of the Ferrari, and then some poor innocent car as well getting collected further up front there. So that was very unfortunate for everybody there. But yeah, unfortunately we have seen a few more incidents. Thankfully not at the first chicane, which is somewhat remarkable, but afterwards it did get a little bit messy. And yeah, that is a shame to see. But the spell for third has just strung itself out just a little bit more in recent laps, although the 2-second gap to the two leaders might be irreversible, to us. I can't see anybody but the BMW crossing that gap.
Wow, I mean, they're already starting to make a bit of progress trying to get past the second of the SMP racing cars down into Aqua Minerale, trying to get the up and under, but they weren't able to make that one stick, and obviously having to worry about Murdasov behind 8th position at the moment is Charlie Cross. And of course, one of the main headlines we're really focused on this race is seeing where they're able to make that progress back up. This is a look back on the replay again to see some of the issues that we've seen. That's the number 11 directly ahead.
That was it. This is somebody clatters into him as well.
41, yeah. Sorry, that's the 41.
41, yeah, not their day, I think it's fair to say. But yeah, a bit of miscommunication on the straight, really. It's kind of, well, I joked earlier, it's not really straight, but it actually really doesn't help when you're side-by-side battling. It can lead to a bit of miscommunication because there's no really defined lanes, if you like. Going down a straight normally, you can kind of stay in your lane, if you like. But when you're bending around corners like that, it becomes a little bit more up for interpretation, and unfortunately if you miscommunicate, then that kind of thing can happen. So it's a shame to see.
I think we are. Oh, that's seen a move. Before I get onto my point there, that is a move from Mikhail Bykov straight down the inside into Toza. Runs it in a little bit too deep, but the SimGrid.Pro by Vides number 42. The car's had 2 pole positions. Started from third, back up into third. Now is Mikhail Bykov, and now eyes up a potential race victory if he can close down the gap to Felix Arndt and Maczkowski. Way too deep there, running into Piratella. We've had 2 retirements. We do believe that the Ravioli car that won, the one that was in that large crash on the start finish straight, of course, when they were hit by Igor Ogromnikov, those 2 we believe are out of the race, which for Ogromnikov, not going to be ideal considering that running into the next race, of course, of the season, when we get to Bathurst, we head to our final round of the season. They will have a quali ban as Willem van Oomen, way too wide there, running through Variante Alta.
Yeah, he's very much the cork in the bottle in this battle. Malinowski's going to get through here very quickly. Inside into Ravatsa, Zampedro's going to try and follow, but it's going to be tricky into the final couple of corners. He got his nose alongside. No, well, he very nearly did, and there's more contact. Cherepenen gets into the side of him, and Van Oomen is going to plummet down the order.
Yeah, apparently it doesn't matter about having an overlap, you can just drive into the back of the car ahead anyway. At least that's what I'm getting from there. That was a bit rough, a little bit dicey. Obviously, one of those things into the final corner, that penultimate and final corner section, you're kind of lulled into trying to make a move. But that final corner, unless you're already alongside, it's not really an overtaking opportunity. You can't really dive into it. The braking zone is far, far too short. It's such a quick corner comparatively from where they were. Here comes Charlie Crossland and getting past Cherepenen. That is the move. That is 6th position now from BMW G2 Esports. I think we are seeing a little bit of crazy town. This is what we were saying. You were saying a bit 50-50. You were on the fence there. I'm thinking we're more on the crazy town side of things, to be perfectly honest.
Well, I mean, yeah, we haven't seen everything, obviously. Something we haven't seen. Williams Esports down in 26th at the minute, I think. Might have picked up 1 or 2 more places since I've not been looking, but yeah, 26th at the moment for Harry Spears, championship leader. Not good news for them at all. this will count as well. 23rd and 16th is their current drop round. I don't think that. I think the points they'll be gaining here will be more, so they'd have to count this. Well, even if they don't count this, it's still not a great score. So, yeah, that's not good news for them, especially given Bykov is third at the minute.
Well, drive-through penalty for the TF Racing Souvlaki car. That obviously comes from the car contact where they pushed Jaroslav Honzik into the rear, and I think it was the Sim Racing Masterclass, the 777, that got picked up through all of that as well. So, not great. And obviously some pretty hefty penalties coming in already in the opening 10 minutes of this race. Charlie Crosland has worked his way up into 6th position now, and eyeing up even further down the road. Let's see what happens here. This is the other TF Racing car. No, this is the TF Racing Souvlaki's car. Looking to the inside, that was the number 7, I believe, straight into the rear end of Patrick Nodge in the number 8. It was Carbon Sim Sport. That wasn't great. I think we can say that as well.
Yeah, not great. We've seen that twice. It's a very unique and quite bizarre incident, but we've seen it twice in the matter of 10 minutes. So that's weird. But anyway, yeah, unfortunately, a few people getting into the back of others and clattering into cars in front, unfortunately. So yeah, that's a shame to see. A little bit, as you say, first race calm by comparison. Second race, things do tend to get a little bit wild. And we are seeing that. It's not exactly a big surprise. It won't be a big surprise to some of these guys, I wouldn't imagine. But still, nevertheless, disappointing the way these races have gone.
It's just how it goes sometimes. Like I said, I mean, there was a stern talking to the crowd after well, to be fair, at the start of this race, it was really after Barcelona, and then that race start down at Bathurst when we had that first attempt, and I'm sure there'll be another pretty stern talking to, and probably quite a lot of penalties to deal with at the start of the next round at Bathurst. Obviously, for accruing too many licence points, you can have quality bans, you can have 15-second time penalties. I think we'll be having quite a few of those when we head to our final round of the championship. By the way, Bykov set the fastest lap of the race, marching towards the top 2, right on the rear end now of Felix Arndt. So that third position right in the mix to try and steal that race victory. You can see there was 3/10 across the line for Bykov. So Pedri and Charlie Crosland both share the fastest lap. That is because they've set exactly the same lap time in the form of a 41.392.
I've never seen that before. I
saw it last week. It was
I mean by the way, the purple thing on the left hand side. I mean, I have seen 2 people set exactly the same time before. That is not uncommon. This is what happened to Williams Esports though. They were right in the mid pack, started about 13th. This is going to be a real concertina, and they are the only ones in that entire kerfuffle to get spun around, which is very unlucky.
That's ridiculous. Like I say, I mean, like from that angle where we could see them 3 or 4 cars ahead stacking up, it's kind of, you're looking at it being like, well, that's a bit of an easy one to avoid. When you're in the car, yeah, you're focused on the car ahead and maybe the car ahead of that, and you're already kind of committing onto the brakes going through Aqua Minerale. When you first kind of commit, your line through the corner is already basically dictated. You're already committing to it at that speed. It's kind of very hard to roll off of it maybe a little bit more or whatever. It is not easy to deal with when heading through. You can see they're the top 3. They focused on the race at hand. The top 3, Maczkowski, Arndt and Bykov rolling through. That is very, very wide there from Malinovsky, and so Pedri might well close in enough. You can see a bit of a slowdown as well, tapping of the brakes. There is the move from Bykov, already through on Felix Arndt up into what is now 2nd position. Malinovsky still able to keep Pedri at bay, who's a little bit deep into the penultimate corner, and that BMW is getting closer. Well, we said not to rule them out. They are charging right now.
Yeah, they have got into 6th position, made 4 places in the first 12 minutes, but they can't afford. I think Bykov is actually surprising me a little bit, I have to say, with the pace he is showing. Obviously, I know that he is quick, and he's shown that in the first race, in qualifying. Well, not qualifying, but in the first race, I should say. And he's really, with alarming quickness, up to the back of the leaders here. If he's able to get through into the lead and start getting away, then once again it is over for the BMW surely in terms of a race win. But while it stays like this, while it's a battle like this, they've got every opportunity, and a mistake like that is really going to help them.
Yeah, way too much curb there from Zempedri, and this is Crossland's opportunity to get around the outside of Tozer. Didn't fancy that one. Might get a good drive off up towards Piratella, but I just don't think that drive's going to be good enough. There is second position in the Bentley, closing in on fellow Bentley Machkowski. This is the only real opportunity now, maybe, from it being a different race winner this season, to continue our trend, making it 8 from 8, because Bykov's right there, but you've got to worry. Jardier Community race winners, to be fair. Crosslands, at the speed they've worked their way up the order, I'm definitely thinking that they are right up there when it comes to their favouritism for this race, where it is going to be them. I just don't know if that Jardier Community car can hang on, at least until the pit stops, at least until they hand over to, of course, the teammate of Valentin Barriere. The 34, is that a DQ? Because they're a black dot on the map, and obviously they did get a pretty substantial penalty to the TF Racing Suvlaki car, and either way I think they've had a very stern talking to.
We might find out soon. Not entirely sure, but yeah, that does certainly not look good for them, I'm afraid. There's a lap car in front of these guys, by the way. That we are seeing the battle for the lead here between Machkowski and Bykov as they run down towards Tamburello once again.
Well, there we go. We're getting word in our ear that they didn't serve the drive-through. The 34, the TF Racing Suvlaki car, they did not serve the drive-through penalty, and that is why that car has been disqualified from this race. So it's not a disqualification, same as we had in race 1, where it was disqualification for breaching too many points in the same time period. It's very different, this one. Whilst we're seeing Bykov, he did a move like that in race 1, if I remember, did Bykov. Got a good drive off of the exit Villeneuve, and then just sent it down the inside going into Tozer, nearly make that one stick on Machkowski.
Yeah, it can work actually. It's not a bad kind of it's not a bad move to make, but obviously it is a little bit of a risky one. If you're not given the room, and if you're not far enough alongside, then you will end up with a penalty, which is exactly not what Bykov needs. He would rather take second than a penalty at this stage, but still a long way to go. He doesn't need to be making really rash decisions and reckless dive bombs here. He just needs to make a kind of calm and considered move, really, if he's going to make one at all, because there's still 45 minutes in this race. No time to panic just yet.
Well, a reckless move was what put them in the position of dropping down the order in the first race, wasn't it? With, of course, Novikov going for it down into Villeneuve. That was what caused the problems in the first one, so can't afford to do it twice in one round.
Yeah, I don't know if I'd go as far as reckless, but certainly probably unnecessary at that stage in the race. But I don't know about reckless, for me, anyway. So there we are.
Well, we're going to have a big argument on this.
What a surprise.
we've had a good few arguments on there in our time. There is the move once again. Bykov looking to the inside. This is a 5-second time penalty to the number 25 dished out. That was the Carbon Sim Sport car receiving that penalty, as Bykov's finding any opportunity to get down the inside. Had a little bit of a breather. That was the Sim Racing Masterclass car they were lapping there, that Felix Arnold's just gone past. There is the move to the outside going into Tozer, sends it on the brakes. Jardier Community hangs on the inside, and the Simware.Pro by Vides car still not able to get past.
Not at the moment, but it's another good run out of Tozer. Is there a move at Piratella? It's not really an overtaking opportunity, but he's so close, he might go for it. He's decided, he's got into the back of the Bentley, and so pushed out wide, trying not to let on through while he lets the Bentley get back onto the road, and they all stay in the same place.
Now, what was that? Was that clumsy? Okay, we'll call it clumsy. Sorry, I'm just gonna. This is just how it goes when me and you are broadcasting. We're just basically, it's all tit for tat. As the 6 cars now are in the train for the race lead. Jardier Community, Simware.Pro by Vides, then the Prime E-Racing car. You've got of course, the Yaz Heat. You've got the Clash Racing car, the 129, that's just trying to get around the outside. Speaking of that battle, going for 4th place right now, a little bit deep there from the Jardier Community car. Bykov gets to the inside. Bykov's wrestling for the race lead, cuts across on the exit, does get the move down the inside, and I think the Jardier Community car might be under pressure from Prime E-Racing on the run down into turn 1. Where does he go? Pulls over to the left-hand side of shot, does Machkowski, and that is the opportunity for Arndt to get through in the slipstream of the number 42, who heads to the front. Malanovsky also trying to get involved in the mix, as they're side by side in the background. Crossland getting around the outside of Clash. There is the Prime E-Racing car grabbing 2nd position as well, still side by side through Tamburello, and Malanovsky's also going to try and find his way through.
Yeah, it's very, very populated now, and they surely going to just make their way through here without incident. They're going to have to, really, because it was all getting a bit too close for comfort, you could argue. Armed with a nice move, very late on the brakes into Tamburello to seal that one. Very impressive indeed. Maskowski had to give it up. Now he's got Malinovsky behind him, which isn't confusing at all. And he's going to have his work cut out here, because that 449 has shown some good pace. Maskowski has also shown that been falling backwards ever so slightly throughout this stint, it has to be said.
Yeah, now they've got to make decisions in this battle of how hard they fight for second. And you might think, well, of course they're going to fight as hard as they want, because they've got to go and catch Bykov. But actually, there is a question to play this like fairly long-winded. If you just go for it in this battle and then you battle, I mean, we saw it in the previous race. If you battle hard, then that gap is going to grow exponentially. It's going to be completely out of touch, and then Bykov and that 42 car, they will win. If you allow yourself to fight too much. Whereas if you kind of work as a train to try and close it in, of course, Maczkowski's definitely not listening to what I'm saying, so that's absolutely fine. But if they work as a train, they might be able to close back in on Bykov. Right now, that is not the order of the day, as the Prime Racing car of Phoenix Island has a lot to answer for right now, looking backwards, flashing with the lights for Malinovsky.
Yeah, I don't really think Maskowski is thinking about this race win, really, for Chardonnay Community Team. That gap's already quite big, and he knows that Bykov is faster than him. He's displayed that earlier on in the race, so just deciding to battle as hard as possible for second. Around the outside of Arndt into turn one. He's got that move done as Crossland is trying to make a move, and it's very aggressive, too aggressive in the background. The BMW's off.
Yeah, I don't know if that was a little bit of the sort of net code and such between them, or whether that was also just Crossland sort of coming over a little bit too much. But either way, they certainly had a little bit of a connection issue there involved in that battle. It's cost Charlie Crossland a fair amount, dropped down now into 9th position. We'll have to wait and see on that one, as it's Sim Racing Masterclass is pulled over to the right-hand side of shot and dropping backwards. Jardine Community Car, Maczkowski now 2nd position. Then it's Malinovsky who is directly behind. Then Arndt, then Zempedri, then Murdasov, Chepelin, and then Parker. Then that's where Crossland has dropped down to, with Kapoccia directly behind. But either way, pretty dicey little battle there. And I know obviously there was connection in there. I just don't know if Charlie Crossland was sort of opening or rather closing the door a little bit between the sort of 2nd and 3rd part of Tamburello.
Yeah, I wonder the same, really, whether there was, well, obviously Netcode was involved, but yeah, was he closing the door? Was he closing the door or not? That's the question. We're going to get another look at what went on side by side into Tamburello. It's a nice move, a nice attempt to get to the inside for the second part. But yeah, does he squeeze ever so slightly too much here? They all brake very late into turn one. So squeeze there. The wheels kind of get connected there. I think it gives just enough room, but the wheels kind of get connected, and the cars obviously bounce off each other strangely when that happens, and so he didn't position his car like that, but obviously the wheels have connected, and they've made a bit of contact, allowing that to all happen, really.
Just a bit of bad luck in the middle of it, to be honest. They were racing hard. They came together. Look in the background, SMP trying to get past the Clash Racing car. It's Murdasov on the inside of Zempedri. No way to find his way through. Obviously got to worry about his teammate, and you kind of think, well, yeah, but your teammate behind you won't have to fight that hard. We saw those two already making a little bit of contact on the run into Tamburello earlier on in this race. On the background, though, there is that BMW. Charlie Crossland's closed back in. 5 seconds of time penalty has been dished out to Zempedri, and that Clash Racing car that we served in the pit stops, and a drive-through penalty for Patrick Nodge in the number 8. So a couple of issues there.
Yeah, unfortunately, and Zempedri also landed himself with a 5-second penalty. So plenty of those coming through, and there's plenty of stuff for race control to be looking at in this race, because it has been very full on so far, and don't expect that to change really in the second half of this race, although it will calm down a little bit, I would imagine. The pit stop window last time, obviously drawing on last race, the battle for second was unbelievable in the first half, but then we barely saw it for the second because there was almost nothing going on. So it could all calm down after this pit stop window. It certainly is going to take a little bit of the tension out of this front group, which is now nearly, it's 8 cars strong now.
Yeah, it is a tight little party here, as they're all trying to find their way into position. It will become 7 as the 919 Murdasov that drive-through penalty, that is not from race control. That drive-through is for track limits, which after 23 minutes of this race, that ain't great to be picking up one of those already. So clearly Murtaugh has been abusing track limits a fair amount. The drive-through penalty that went to Patrick Minaj, you saw it there, it was for blocking in a pretty intense battle. Those are just kind of how they go sometimes, but yeah, clearly some track limits are being abused here. That's typically how I drive, being a touring car specialist. The track limits are sort of there to help, right? No, I'm normally a good boy.
Sort of, yeah, a suggestion rather than a rule.
Yeah.
But I don't know.
That's
It's
not
hard
the case,
to.
really.
Yeah, we're not condoning breaking the rules, by the way. But everybody does it. If you watch this corner here, has everybody got their four wheels within the white line? No, probably not. But we could argue about track limits until the cows come home, to be honest. So we'll not. But yeah, I get your point.
Would you be a rule breaker, do you reckon, if you actually were racing and stuff, rather than being a wimp and sat up here in the commentary booth?
Well, a wimp.
I've retired. That's why I'm up here.
Well, am I old enough to have retired? Don't know.
Am I old enough to have retired? I was thinking.
Yeah, you're old.
Oh,
yeah,
goodness
you're
me.
old.
Oh, goodness.
Yeah.
Wow. Right. Anyway, that's you never coming back to this. Gotcha. Charlie Crossland, either way, tried to get into 8th place, obviously on the rear end of James Parker. Once we've crossed this lap, will be the last one outside the pit window. In a minute's time, the pit window will open. The opportunity for them to come in for the first time will be there. Wonder how many in that group will dive in straight away. I think quite a few. I'd kind of say Charlie Crossland would probably be in the pit lane on the first call to hand over to Robbie Stapleton. Kind of feel.
I certainly would be if I was on that on that BMW G2 Esports team. You don't want to be in this traffic for much longer, although he has just got through and dispatched James Parker there, who's now under pressure from Capoccia into the Villeneuve chicane. We've seen this end badly before, and they're both going for it into there. Have they made it out the other side? Thankfully they have. Parker will hold on as the battle for second begins to ramp up. Malinowski makes his way through on Mavskovsky. Nice move, and aren't just watching on from behind.
Yeah, this is a car that's definitely going to stay out probably towards the end of the pit window sequence now that Malinowski's got back up into second position, has got past the Jardier community car of Mavskovsky. Like I said, they've got to worry about Felix Arndt a little bit as well, but Malinowski surely has the pace now just to set his sights on grab a second position. Pit window does indeed open using that curb, abusing it just on a little bit on the exit of Aqua Minerale. It's the slipstream that Mavskovsky's looking for from that Yazheat car just to keep Felix Arndt directly behind. Not going to be too easy, of course. They've got to worry. Sam Pedri also closing in, but with a 5-second time penalty. Murtaugh will also have to be in the pit lane, I believe, this time to serve that drive-through penalty for track limit abuses in the 919 SMP racing car. So pretty chaotic for them. Unfortunately, that 919 is going to drop down the order because they have to do the drive-through and then obviously then serve the pit stop as well. So not great.
Yeah. I don't really know why they didn't do it earlier. Really, the drive-through. And they still haven't, but oh no, there they go into the pit lane now to serve that drive-through release. So yeah, as I say, don't know why they didn't do that earlier, but better late than never, I suppose. These little two-car battles are going to be rife for the next few minutes, I would imagine, because the pit stop window really is going to throw this race wide open for the next 8 minutes or so before it all comes back together again.
There's Chris Hartwell trying to get around the outside, of course, of the Volante car, which did manage to get itself just on the rear end, on the cusp of the top 10. I think it was running around about 11th spot. Said they were working their way up the order bit by bit, and clearly, having done so, the opening of the pit winner sequence has dragged pretty much half the grid in straight away on the first time of asking. Of course, Bykov pretty happy to sit out there in the race lead at the moment, 7.5 seconds. Dominant out front. As I said, as soon as you start battling behind, you're allowing that race leader to carry away the resistance. In this grouping, they have been battling very, very hard indeed, and it's just what's allowed that 7.5 second, 8 second gap to appear. It's not formed out of nothing. Great lap times from Bykov, but heavy battling from behind as here comes Pedri looking to the inside. That would have been a pretty bold one to absolutely lob it down at Variante Alta.
It would have been very brave and possibly a little bit stupid, depending on who you ask. But yeah, he decides not to go for it. I think at this stage, now the pit window is open, it's the kind of ambition to make any kind of move really is diminished a little bit. because obviously you do have the option to make the undercut and just dive into the pit lane as Zempedri is doing right now. Why make the overtake on the circuit where you'll be losing time when you could try and do it in the pit stop phase without actually losing anything? You can just do it, without losing any time at all. So that's what a lot of these guys have decided to do. Although the kind of opposite thing is happening here, because everybody's coming out and they're all kind of stacked together all over again. So it's not really worked, but we are going to see a few stay out for a very long time, you'd imagine.
It's about doing the opposite of who you're battling with, isn't it? And you're hoping that to have enough space to do as you wish. Either way, Bykov still leading. There you go. It's 8 seconds now. They'll probably be out until the end of the pit window sequence. There's Sasha Galata, who was trying to attack Dimitrov as Dimitrov came down to the pit lane. That Volante car, racework.com with that 91. Now closing in on Chris Harteveld. Of course, we'll see Herber now back in the wheel of the GTWR RHG Academy car once that's come into the pit lane. We're not even halfway through this race, so I'm kind of surprised by how many have come in this early in the sequence. I would have expected more to have stayed out at least until the halfway point of the race.
Yeah, I'm a little bit surprised by that as well, but I feel like this race, in terms of the trains that we were having, a little bit more closed up than the first race. Obviously, an hour ago or an hour or two, we saw everybody was in the correct positions, in inverted commas. They were in the right place, so everybody kind of spread out naturally. But that hasn't happened here, obviously, because we've got a reverse grid going on, and it does mean that everybody stays packed up a little bit more than otherwise they might. So it obviously will motivate a lot of people to come in early, but this is the problem that guys who are staying out a long time have. You see, Bykov is going to be coming across a lot of lap traffic, and you saw there he will have lost at least half a second into turn one there, as there was a bit of kind of I don't want to say miscommunication, but a little bit of hesitation for both of those lap cars to get into Tamburello. So yeah, would have lost a little bit of time there, but with an 8-second lead, it won't damage him too much.
Well, Tinko van der Velde there, after making that early pit stop, of course, he's had to just jump out of the way there of the FFS racing car, just making its way through. That is James Parker, of course, on the lead lap, so it might be a little bit frustrating for the number 80. Numbers and stuff and penalties coming through. Of course, you did see the 111 getting a plus 5 second time penalty there. That, of course, being the alphasport.com covers against Carbon Sim Sport Blue. Not necessarily sure as to what the penalty is there for the 221, the RHG esports car, Nicholas Hoban and Andrea Capoccia. They have a stop and go 30, and I don't know what it's for. Not had a note from race control as to why that car's received such a large penalty, but either way, that is what they have to deal with. That would be pretty race destroying, shall we say.
Oh yeah, I mean, drive-throughs are quite race destroying, never mind having to stop for 30 seconds as well. I only have one theory, and it's speeding in the pit lane. I don't really know anything else that might trigger that kind of penalty so instantly, because I certainly haven't seen it involved in any kind of incident. So yeah, I'm not entirely sure, but indeed the race leader, sick of the lap cars, into the pit lane after only 31 minutes of this race, a little bit before you might expect.
Yeah, I'm actually surprised of all of these. The one that has stayed out is Charlie Crossland. Is the one that stayed out a lot longer than I would have expected. There they are, the BMW G2 esports car. I would have expected Robbie Stapleford to have been behind the wheel a bit earlier in this race. Not because there's much of a pace differential, because the pace they're both setting is great. So it's not necessarily that. It's more about getting into that clean air. Clearly, they know better than us because they're doing the opposite of everyone else. Yeah. Had they actually pitted at this point, they would have just come out in the same group that they'd gone in with. So, you know, fair enough. But that was the car I was more expecting to have already been in pit lane.
Yeah, I was as well. But if they did do that, then you're right, they would have ended up in the same traffic, because so many came in so early on that doing that undercut strategy, which is often seen as the alternate strategy, we've actually seen them in more traffic than they're seeing right now. So. Given the way the race has played out in front of them, they have done this what I would say is the right way. Obviously, we'll see if that indeed translates to a good finish. But yeah, so many came in there that it was actually the road was actually cleaner in front of them than it would have been if they came in for an early stop.
Well, here comes Patil going in the inside now. Well, it'll be the inside for the first couple of kicks. The outside for Tamburello on Smolja. Be a pretty heavy braking zone from the Clash Racing car. It'll be a bit deep on the brakes, but obviously not able to make that one stick. And Alex Smolja hangs on to 12th position right now as further pit stops continue. With there being 2.5 minutes left of this pit window as well. This will be the final laps, really. These drivers and teams can come into the pit lane and do the switch.
Yes, it's that time rapidly winding down, and we're soon going to have a very good idea of where everybody is. I have to say, on first look, the front of the race in terms of the battle for second is a lot less close than it was when we saw before the pit stops. This is exactly what happened last time, really, and then it was quite a calm second half of the race in terms of those front battles. But let's see, there certainly will still be battling going on, as we're seeing in front of our eyes right now.
Yeah, a little bit dicey there once again from Patil and Smolja down the inside. Piratella tried to get to the outside of Aqua Minerale, but that one didn't work. And this time down into Variante Altas, Smolja not really looking particularly as strong in this race as he was looking in the earlier stages of the first race here this afternoon. And feeling a bit of the pressure from the 129 Clash Sim Racing car directly behind, slightly defensive line running down into Ravazza just to keep that car at bay, and that is how it's going to go. Malinovsky still leading. This is that they'll be coming into the pit lane surely this time by as to where they are on the racetrack. They're just coming down to the final section now. This is their last call for Malinovsky, for Crossland, for Harteveld to come into the pit lane, and then everyone has completed their pit lane sequence as Patil once again closing in on Smolja.
Yeah, and once, oh my word, the lap car as well getting involved, and there's contact. 3 into 1 doesn't go, and I'm afraid 2 of them have gone around, at least half the way around, and so that is a shame to see, but so it was always going to happen. Nearly 3 wide into Tamburello there. It was never going to work, unfortunately.
Yeah, it was Ballas Esports that were coming out of pit lane there, and just a little bit. Unfortunately, they were in the wrong place at the wrong time. They just came out of pit lane. They were keeping to themselves, and then suddenly they know they've got 2 cars on the inside, absolutely sending it in. That one will not be too easy. Investigation between the 129 and the 62. Of course, the 62 is the BMW G2 Esports car. The 129 is the Clash Sim Racing car. That'll be investigated post-race. Again, as we were saying earlier, if it's sort of one of those ones where they're not necessarily sure as to what the correct outcome will be, is they'll sit down afterwards with both teams and be like, right, let's figure out what actually happened there, and then make our call. Of course, there was a lot of connection there as well, so there's a few avenues they can go down to actually work out what went wrong in that, and adjudicate correctly, which, but if you don't know, sometimes it's really not obvious. I think it's always the right call to sort of delay a little bit until you have all of the facts. There's no need to jump to a decision sort of haphazardly if you don't need to.
Yeah, I think the main reason why that's a good idea is because of the connection problems. We spoke about it at the time. It certainly was a factor, and it's worth looking over afterwards. But meanwhile, in the further down, we've seen quite a big change in this battle for second. Thought Valentin Barrier was going to be the one to actually come out in second, but he's not. Statsenko is going to be in front of him, and Robbie Stapleford as well. They've done a fantastic job on the overcut there. We normally see those who come in early, making that early stop, make the jump, but so many had the same idea. It was actually beneficial to stay out.
Now, okay, this is a bit odd. Do you think now, Robbie Stapleford, looking at the times, look at how far that 42 is down the road. The SimGrid Pro by Vides car is going into Aqua Minerale now as they're departing Piratella. That is not an unassailable gap. That is a gap that can definitely be brought down. Now, if Robbie Stapleford can clear Mikhail Statsenko, somehow there is, you can see in the bottom right, that is where your race leader is. There is essentially the straight of each corner between them, a straight between Variante Alta and Aqua Minerale. What is between Piratella and Aqua Minerale between them? There is not much, and there is the wide run from Statsenko. That has allowed Robbie Stapleford to already grab second position. Can that BMW G2 Esports car make the double here this afternoon? With 20 odd minutes left to go in this race, and now they're in second. I'm not ruling it out, mate.
No, you wouldn't want to count them out. Certainly, that, in my opinion, that was actually the most difficult part of the job. But that obstacle has quickly fallen by the wayside. Statsenko there with a mistake he's going to be quite frustrated with, you'd imagine. get bouncing all over those curbs, and so loses out on second place. Really have to watch those lap times. 6.4 seconds as they start this lap. What has Novikov got in response? Because he does have quite a safety buffer, it has to be said, to fall back on throughout the remainder of this race. And there isn't that long to go, in all honesty, you know, only just over 20 minutes.
Yeah, around about a third left of this race. Valentin Barriere was trying to get past Mikhail Statsenko straight away, but there wasn't really the opportunity down into turn one. Again, a little bit better on the exit of Villeneuve, deeper on the brakes into Tosa as well. So that Bentley, the number 44 Jardier Community car that started this race from pole position, looking to go on the attack, looking to grab their second podium of the season, obviously to join that race victory at Brands Hatch. Unfortunately, the race victory should realistically elude them unless something major happens in the final 22 minutes left of this race, which, to be fair, in the Coach Dave Super Sprint, I'm not going to rule out. There's another big moment there from Statsenko, clearly not in control of that Yazhi car, really straight from the off, feeling the pressure. Yeah,
he is, and we spoke about it before the race got underway. You need to be on it straight away in this race. We're doing a lot of, you know, 2 driver changes for this event. You only really get half an hour in the car each. That is not enough time to really slowly settle your way in to the car and to kind of get moving slowly. You've got to go all out right from the very start. And Statsenko, in his attempts to do that, has unfortunately made a couple of mistakes. And I have a feeling that, no disrespect to Maszkowski, but I have a feeling Valentin Barriere is just that little bit quicker than his teammate. Will be able to put up a little bit more of a fight up here at the front of the field. I'm not counting them out for a podium at all, although I do think it will be between these two.
Yeah, it's just been very crazy this season, to be honest, how we've seen so many different cars fight for podiums. You can genuinely, hand on heart, you can be fighting to get inside the top 21 race, and then suddenly the next one you're fighting for a race victory, and you're like, hang on, like, well, how? What? But it's what's made this season so good, the first season of the Coach Dave Super Sprint. This is the opportunity for Valentin Barriere to look to the inside of Tosa, really sends it in deep. There's going to be a bit of contact as they lose them behind the trees. It should be the good drive off of the corner though from Statsenko. It'll draw them side by side up towards Piratella. Advantage surely towards the Jardier Community car of Valentin Barriere onto the brakes around the outside. Statsenko's not going to try it, but Barriere's in way too deep as they depart Piratella and head down towards Aqua Minerale. Valentin Barriere has rescued the podium for the Jardier Community team, and Prime E Racing, Sven Hettich, is closing in.
He is closing in. I think he's going to do well to overhaul these two, though, in this battle. Statsenko has been absolutely rolled by Barriere, it has to be said, in that one with less than 20 minutes to go. And yeah, as you say, really struggling to get going, Statsenko, which is rare to see. You wouldn't expect this from him, really. But for whatever reason, that Mercedes going absolutely nowhere off of the start of this stint.
Yeah, it just kind of, I don't know if they've overdone their tyres in the first part. Of course, that's what we have to think about as well, is they've not been able to switch tyres. They're running on the same tyres that they have done before, as Chris Severa is going to defend a little bit from Riley, of course, in that Volante car. Kind of a little bit of a completely off-topic thing. Before Volante was called Volante, it was called TCS off. And before and after that, it was called something really Allied Racing Esports by TCS off. Ridiculous name for a team. But either way, I'm pretty sure that Chris Sever's done quite a lot of racing for it years ago, doing the Virtual Endurance Championship. I'm pretty sure he did for TCS off. A bit of a completely different tangent, but in some sort of past racing life, he's raced in that team for sort of like his team. Either way, completely different tangent. You know what my memory's like, so fair enough. Either way, going to have to fight quite hard to hang on to 12th position. But when you're battling with a car that is the same as yours, you know, another McLaren, you kind of understand the strengths and weaknesses. It's not like when you're going into battle between, say, for example, the BMW and a Bentley. There's a lot more at play there, and you kind of have to work out on the fly where you're strong. Whereas like this, they probably know already.
Yeah, it's that is true. It does take away an aspect of GT3 racing, which is, of course, so prominent, the strengths and weaknesses of the different cars, using that against one another, etc. But that's not really going to be the case in this all-McLaren battle. And yeah, Siva, he has been around for a while, hasn't he, to be fair to him, on different sims as well. Even I've seen him about, so he must be everywhere. Because even I've seen him, so there we are. But yeah, not bad driver either. Very solid indeed, just outside the top 10 for the 91 team at the moment.
Mate, I'm going to get you onto this. So second season of the Coach Dave Super Sprint, me and you, we're going to team up. We're going to race. We're going to get behind the wheel of a car.
Lewis is just completely slander against one of your commentators.
Christy, yeah, no, I'm with you. But David, I don't have anything to teach David, whereas you know, probably.
I do need teaching, to be fair.
Yeah, exactly. Me and David, we would just win too easily, so there's no point, right? You get what I'm saying?
No,
I'm
not picking up.
No, me neither, mate. As we'll see this move from Florian Durkop going around the outside of Sarosi in the Ballas esports car. That, of course, being the 486, bit side by side. The Ballas esports car has been backwards at Tamburello. That was a lovely little bit of racing to go side by side through Tamburello and showing everyone, hey, actually, it can be done. Don't jinx it, though, lads. Don't make contact running into Villeneuve as they get through that one and now into Tosa. Lovely.
Yeah, very, very, very nice battle indeed. Enough room given through Villeneuve as well, which is arguably a little bit harder, especially that first part where we've seen incidents in the past, more than one occasion. But yeah, that was a nice battle between the two. The 995 Remvelton car getting into the top 10, and that is a good recovery on the day. Remember, those three cars somehow, by some miracle, qualified one after the other, but not that well, unfortunately. Will have taken a lot of fighting through the field, a lot of avoiding incidents, and a lot of overtaking at a difficult circuit for them to be able to get this top 10. So fair play to them on that one. Finally managing to get there and hopefully holding on to it, although they're going to have trouble there, being hounded by that Bentley almost immediately.
Yeah, like I say, it's been a long evening's racing for quite a few of these teams. They've had to work their way up the order through the two races that we've had here. It's not an easy racetrack. If you were going racing it somewhere like, you know, Watkins Glen, or something, it's not an ACZ, but find my logic that, you know, if you qualify badly around somewhere like that, you can use the track, the slipstream, the long straights to sort of affect a pass. That long stretch and the back stretch, you know, you can make quite a lot of moves almost with relative ease to some degree. Round here, though, you really have to properly work for it. You've got to be perfect all day, and that is incredibly difficult. Looking to the inside, once again, that Volante car not able to find its way through. Just to update you as well on the gaps for the race lead and how that is forming. Unfortunately for Robbie Stableford, for you BMW G2 Esports fan, Novikov's pace is plenty good enough to keep the BMW G2 Esports car at bay. At the moment, it's dropping only by about 2, 3, 4 tenths a lap each lap. Robbie Stableford just doesn't have the pace to close down on Novikov right now, and it looks like Novikov, if things stay as they are, if there is no mistakes, Novikov should be okay. The only person that can beat Novikov is Novikov. And so, who knows what's going to happen in that battle?
Yeah, I mean, I reckon the gap will probably be down to 2 seconds by the end of this race if they continue on at this pace, and that relentless consistency as well that they're both showing at this stage. But yeah, it's not quite enough for Stableford. That's right, at the early part of the race, I said it all depends on the battle for second more than the battle for the win. How are they going to let a leader get away? That's exactly what happened. They nearly got to the front in that BMW before a leader actually got away. They weren't quite able to get there in time, so Novikov was able to build a lead, looks like one that he's going to be able to hold out towards the end, but there's still 14 minutes to go, which is plenty of time. Luckily, much less traffic than we saw at the last race. The lower race pace at the front of the field means that they're not catching up to the back of the field like BMW were on the first race.
Look as well at this, the sort of like the fourth car in this line, that Aston Martin, that is Darren King in the Dalkin community car. The car that when Philemon Oman was behind the wheel, final corners, there's the squeeze off Sia from Chris Sever. That is a bit of a shame, was just squeezed by Sarosi, drops a few positions rolling through the gravel trap at Tamburello. That was very unfortunate for the racework.com car, just got squeezed there into the braking zone. There was certainly not enough room for the McLaren 720 of Sever. Instantly down the inside of the Carbon SimSport car, rolling through, and that one be another position drop. I was going to say though, Darren King, after that car was backwards in the gravel trap at the final corner, now maybe fighting for a top 10, that would be fantastic.
It would be a very good recovery from the both of them. Dan King especially making his way through these cars. I think he might hit the limit at 11th. I saw a lot of battling heading towards Piratella there between these guys. Jonathan Riley has got up into 11th place by the looks of things. Darren King, though, followed him through on that Bentley of Sarosi there, so he's not having a great time of things in this stint. Over 3.5 seconds up to the Renfelton 995. It'll be very tricky for this Aston Martin to get onto the podium, unfortunately, but it's a very spirited effort nevertheless.
Got to say that Ballas Esports car probably has a bit of damage on. Of course, it was involved in that three-way crash rolling into the first corner where he had two cars dive it down the inside and unfortunately couldn't really do very much about it. So there probably is a little bit of trailing damage from that. There's the door open for the SMP Racing Esports car of Oleg Kamenev down the inside, escorted wide there, and that's another position drop. Next one up is Carbon Sim Sports closing in, and then of course potentially even an investigation underway from race control as well to add into all of that. 4.3 seconds the gap to the race lead, 12 minutes left to go. Looking a bit more like it. The last lap it was 0.6 of a second that Robbie Stableford was able to close in, and there is Darren King closing in on the rear end of Riley as well. There is that 11th spot that you were alluding to that might be the best that the Dalton Community car can grab.
I think it might just well be, unless of course we're saying all these things like there might not be any mistakes throughout the rest of the race. There very much could be, so we'll wait and see on that one, but it looks unlikely that they'll get any further, and even a little bit unlikely that they'll get through at all at this stage. Yeah, that Bentley does look like it's struggling. He's mentioned damage earlier. It certainly looks like it from that shot we got coming out of Tozer there.
Yeah, there was. I don't know if I'm pretty sure there was a bit of contact on the rear end as well, maybe from Carbon Sim Sport and such. But either way, yeah, not great. There's Alex Somolia on the rear end of David Patil, who has a 5-second time. So this position will already get switched at the checkered flag, regardless. If they continue on in this little fight, it's allowed Mike Noble to clear off in the distance in 6th place in that FFS Racing car. The one that was denied, finishing in the top 10 by just the single position after a fair amount of contact between them and the 41. Obviously, they've not had the evening they wanted, but still, if they're running inside the top 10 in this race, that'll feel at least some form of reprieve as the gap now for the lead comes down to 4 seconds.
This is coming down by about a second every 5 minutes, but with only 10 minutes to go and a 4-second gap, excuse me. It's not quite enough for Stableford, but Novikov is going to be very glad about that. He absolutely needs the points, and I reckon they might. Well, I've not done the maths on this at all, but I reckon they'll be taking the championship lead here. It's a first and 8th. It's got to be one of the bigger points hauls of anybody here today, and obviously with Williams Esports having a relative disaster in 20th position at the moment, well, they'll probably get up to 19th with that 5-second penalty for the 111. However, still not many points, and they might well lose the lead.
And it's such a shame for Williams Esports. They were dealt a very rough deck for this one after being sent off. But really, they should have been looking at a much better evening, to be perfectly honest. But you can't win them all. And unfortunately, this will be one they look back on and think, right, well, that's where it went really sideways. Doesn't mean it's over. Bathurst can deal many surprises. So when we get to our season finale in a couple of weeks' time, who knows what's really going to happen. There is Sarosi defending from Samira Brahimi, who's closed right in the Renfelton Esports car, that number 72 that got into the couple of issues in the first race of the evening. Kind of got to clear this Ballas Esports car pretty quickly, knowing that there is, regardless of whether it's damage or tyres or even just the driver not being in the rhythm, every single lap that you're sat behind that car is time you're losing.
Well, we say that, but Chris Sibber has not been able to get very far ahead of this Bentley all of a sudden. So, yeah, it's a bit of a weird one in this midfield battle. It has to be said, because as you say, the Bentley was in free fall a minute ago, but now all of a sudden applying a bit of pressure to the McLaren that was driving very quickly not so long ago, looking like it was ripping down all gaps up in front of it. So, who really knows in that battle a little bit further down? As Darren King continues his run further up the field once more, although won't be close enough for a move on Riley into Tamburello, and so stays behind just one more lap, although probably not many more laps at this stage. We're really winding down, and so he's got to make the move sooner rather than later.
Certainly not with the pace that's being dished out at the front. You can see there where we had two teams having the fastest lap of the race, being the G2 Esports and the Clash Racing car. No longer the case. There's been a fastest lap set from Robbie Stapleford in that BMW G2 Esports car, 41.152 heading into the final 10 minutes of this race. Incredible speed being shown, that gap being closed down now, 3.3 seconds heading into the final 8 minutes. I'm still kind of more on the region of you. I don't think it's coming down fast enough for there to be a move effective, but it's going to be very close, and the closer that car gets, the more pressure that's going to be dealt with. We could be in for a pretty barnstorming end, and maybe we'll actually hear some excitement from the BMW G2 Esports team in their next interview if we hear from them after this race. If not, we'll hear from the 42, and if not, we'll hear from someone else. Who knows what's going to happen in that battle?
Yeah, who knows? I think it's going to be Novikov, I have to say. But you're right, 7.5 minutes to go. Anything can still happen, and it is still, it's still a battle that's worth keeping an eye on, even though it's not exploding just yet. This is the battle probably furthest up the field at the moment, really. Can't see any of the others up in front of these guys really changing. Statsenko seems to have a control over Hedgic at the moment, or Darren King. So probably the furthest forward driver to have an opportunity. Reeling in this McLaren here at quite an alarming rate. He's just been given the inside.
It might be the 5-second time penalty that Volante car has. There you go, in the braking zone, lifting, allowing it to pass, kind of understanding the situation that Volante car is in. Less so focusing on the positions ahead, more so focusing on building a 5-second gap to as many people behind as possible after being dished out that 5-second time penalty. And whilst they've been battling behind, you can see them kind of all closing back in. That number 17 receiving the 5-second time penalty for contact with the 486 as well. So that's where that dished with. The 486, of course, being the Team Ballas Esports car that's dropped right down the order. There is Sarosi in that 486 that was up there, inside the top 10, and now certainly not.
Yeah, certainly isn't. Dropping it even further down now. Another Ren Velton car just behind by the looks of things. So just trying to defend from that Ferrari. So yeah, number of 5-second penalties towards the end of this race, has to be said, has been creeping up in these last couple of laps. Patil has got one as well now. Not entirely sure why, unless I've just seen it. Probably have, but
I think Patil had one already.
Oh yeah, he might have had one for a little while, but there's 3 inside the top 20 that have appeared in the last 10 minutes or 15 minutes or so. So but maybe I'm just not being that observant, which is possible.
One of us. Joking.
Which is it's very possible. But yeah, there's a few floating around, obviously to be avoided, but unfortunately a few of these teams have not been able to. In the latter portion of this race.
I will say that this is, for Robbie Stapleford, this will actually be quite a lot of fun. When you're closing in on the leader and you're closing in every single lap, you're finding time, a little bit of contact there. I think just a slight touch between them as they jigged through each of the little kinks on the start-finish straight. Sarosi around the outside, just trying to keep Samira Brady at bay. There is a side-by-side up and onto the curbs. The Ferrari makes it stick around the outside of the second part. Lovely move from the Ren Welton car. That was absolutely brilliant. Once again, a lovely bit of side-by-side racing action just outside of the top 10 in 16th position. Back on board with Robbie Stapleford. Like I said, this is fun when you can see that car and it's getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Trust me, the Bentley is quite a big car as well, so you've had that target for a little while. And Robbie Stapleford is closing in, using everything of the track. You feel like you're on fire. You know where you're hooking it up. You know where you're feeling fast. You know where you're feeling in control. Right now, Robbie Stapleford is closing in. I'm with you. I don't think it's enough. We'll have 3 more laps here at Imola, and the gap as we cross the line to start the 3 laps to go realistically 2.1 seconds, closing in 0.6 a lap. Realistically, it'll be very close, and that was another fastest lap of the race as well from Robbie Stapleford.
Yeah, only 3 laps to go though, with over 2-second margin. He really does have to get a move on here, because you've got to think, not only has he got to close in, but he's got to size up a move, and we've seen time after time at this event here today, you need laps to kind of size this one up. You need to plan it laps in advance, really, rather than a last gasp kind of lunge. They don't tend to work out too well around here. We haven't seen them working out very well so far, so why would it be any different now? It's going to be still very tricky. They might end up finishing nose to tail, but I can't see Stapleford having enough road here to actually make a move.
No, he really needs to get there before like a run down into the first corner into Tamburello. That's where the biggest opportunity really is. We'll keep our eye very much on that gap over the next couple of laps, as well as Mike Noble joins the battle for 4th position. Stutsenko was keeping Hettich at bay, but now has to worry about an extra contender for this 4th position battle. A three-way fight, just been closing in bit by bit, has Mike Noble in that FFS racing car, and now is really knocking at the door. So might make things a little bit more tricky for Stutsenko, especially if he can make that move, if he can affect that pass down into turn 1 this time by.
FFS Racing have been so fast today. They've been constantly moving forward. A lot of bad luck in the first race, a lot less of that in this race, and they're getting the rewards for that now, because they've got a very realistic chance here of finishing inside the top 5. Hettich is going to have to really get a move on here on Stutsenko if he wants to defend 5th place, I think, really. But yeah, I'm surprised by Stutsenko in this race, I have to say, because normally you'd say one of the faster drivers, but struggled, and 6 seconds behind Barrier, who started almost side by side with this stint, to be honest, these two. He's finishing 6 seconds behind that Bentley, so yeah, Stutsenko has been a little bit underwhelming in this second half of the race, has to be said.
Yeah, I'd agree. I don't think he's really found his rhythm, has Stutsenko, or to be fair, the Yaz Heat 449 anyway. It's not been the greatest day for Yaz, who came into the 2 cars really in championship contention. Unfortunately for one of them, it's been a really bad day. For the other one, it's been an alright day. But when you're going up against teams this late in the season, you've got to have great days. The 62 we heard in the interview post-race 1, they still feel their realistic chances of winning this championship is certainly not done. Certainly not with the race victory in a dominant fashion. If they can get the double, if they can take both race victories this afternoon, then surely they are going into the final as one to keep an eye on. We know this Bentley, based on what we attempted a couple of weeks ago, this BMW rather, is not particularly slow. Up and over the mountain, 1.4 seconds the gap for the race lead, heading down to the final sector of the penultimate lap of the race.
Yeah, this is why Stapleford is really running out of time, because he needs to be on the back of Novikov right now for that move into Tamburello, really, since this is going to be his final opportunity to do so, and that's why Noble is in a much better position to do this, or to actually make a last-minute move. But we'll see if the Aston Martin can do it. Not really that close through the final corner, but the McLaren had a bit of a slide there, and so Noble has his one and only opportunity.
We'll see if it comes almost immediately. That bright pink FFS Racing car closing in. Is this the opportunity? Sven Hettich goes one way, goes back the other way, and the McLaren on the defensive line on the left-hand side of shot. The 1-2-3 FFS Racing car going around the outside, trying to affect that move. Is alongside, though, as they go through the first part of Tamburello. I think Robbie Stapleford, by the way, has had a mistake. It was 1 second at the start-finish line. As we exit the first sector, it's 1.6, and Novikov looking strong.
Yeah, he's going to be very glad about that as well, because there's a couple of lap cars just up in the distance here. That could have caused some very nervy moments in the final laps of this race, or the final corners of this race, I should say. But it looks like he's just about going to have enough to hold on.
Well, we're hearing our ear. Robbie Stapleford went straight over at Tamburello, closing in, obviously quite quickly, throwing everything that he could at it to try and close him with his Bentley, and just maybe threw a little bit too much across into the final sector. The gap will be around 1.5 to 1 second as we head down the hill into the braking zone. A fantastic drive it has been so far. We've had a fantastic championship here in the Coach Dave Super Sprint. It was 7 different race winners that we had in the previous one, after Robbie Stapleford and Charlie Crossland took their victory, already weaving out of the final corner, because the 42 has done the work. Mikhail Baikov started the race in fantastic fashion. Alexander Novikov ends it, and Simware.pro by Vides finally take their race victory, and that number 42 that had bad fortune in the first race makes it our 8th different winner of the Coach Dave Super Sprint Season 1. Absolutely sensational. Stapleford and Crossland coming behind, and then it's Valentin Barriere coming across the line with Machowski, his teammate, of course. A tight drag race toward the line. Let's see what they can do. Sven Hettich trying to keep at bay that Aston Martin, and certainly does so. Stutsenko had checked out. Hettich kept Noble at bay. Patil comes across the line with a 5-second time penalty and drop behind Alex Simolia. What a crazy end to the race. But that 42, as we were saying for quite a while, they just had it in them, just about.
they just about started with a big enough head start in that final stint, really, because any closer and they might well have been caught. Said it was going to be 2 seconds. It actually could have been closer than the 1 second it ended up at, because as we've heard, there was a mistake at Tamburello from Stapleford in his chase for that race win. Wasn't able to do it, but it was a very important win for Novikov there and the 42 team. So they take a big step forward in this championship after a disappointing day for the number 80 Williams Esports Mercedes. We just saw that.
Like I say, when your championship rivals are having bad days, those are the ones that you take advantage of. I think I'm absolutely with you. That SimWare.Pro by Vides car, that will surely be leading the title race heading into our final round of the season when we head there in a couple of weeks' time. We'll try and catch up with the number 42 as well to hear exactly what has gone on with their race, because it seemed fairly comfortable after they got the race lead, but I'm sure they would have been watching that gap and really feeling the pressure, because that is part of the game. It's dealing with pressure. It's not just about side-by-side racing. It's about watching those gaps and making sure that you're going as fast as you can without kind of pushing it too far beyond.
Yeah, no, they did soak up the pressure very well, particularly Novikov at the end of that race. But yeah, it wasn't easy before they got to lead. It has to be said, they did have to fight their way through there, starting in 3rd place on the race. I do feel like for the 44 team, if Barrier was starting, they might have held on to the race winner, maybe got away in the lead for a little bit longer. No disrespect to Mashkovsky, of course, but I do feel like they might have held on a little bit longer. In the end, Bykov was able to get off to a good start and hand over the car to Novikov in a great position, and he did the rest from there.
I kind of wonder what we can expect when we head into the final round of the season. Of course, it's going to be a pretty tight affair once we head onto the mountain, but it's going to be a tricky one. It's a little bit dicey. We saw the issues in the first race when we attempted it a couple of weeks ago. I'm not so sure what to expect.
No, I'm not sure what to expect either. Really, it's going to be very interesting indeed. Championship finales at Bathurst are not something that you see very often, and there might be a good reason for that. But yeah, it's a very difficult circuit on your own, to be honest, in terms of just an isolated race, never mind a championship like this that is going to go down to the wire. So yeah, let's see really what happens at Bathurst. It should be very interesting to watch indeed.
Well, we'll try and see if we can actually get anything out of G2 Esports this time, and see if they're actually at least somewhat excited after a great run into 2nd place. We'll catch up once again with Robbie Stapleford, who was closing in those final moments of the race. Robbie, did you think you could catch him? I mean, it was coming down so quickly, and there was a late race mistake. Talk about it.
I think if we didn't have the net code in the early stage, I think it was the double win was possible. And if we didn't have 6 seconds towards the end, they probably could have gone even quicker. So
now, what's the car like at Bathurst? Obviously, we had a little bit of a taster of it a couple of weeks ago. Are you feeling confident?
I'm feeling very confident for Bathurst. Yeah, we'll do a few more laps, and hopefully it's as good as, if not better, as what we did last time.
Well, over to your teammate, Charlie Crossley, obviously right in the thick end of things, but you kept it clean, nice and clean, sort of out of everyone's way. Was it like a very patient start to the race, not really getting involved too much?
Yeah, I was trying not to. It's tough not to get involved. But yeah, we just tried to keep it clean, but the net code stopped us.
And well, I don't really know what to expect from you guys in the next round, but also what can we expect from you in the future? Where are you kind of expecting to pop up in sim racing?
Everywhere.
Fantastic.
Same as this.
Great interviews, lads. I think we'll let you enjoy the evening.
Cheers, Lewis.
Well, there we go. We've had a little catch up with G2. We can now have a little bit of a catch up with one of the members of the SimWare.Pro. We've got Kirill Sadorov alongside us in the booth to talk about things from a team perspective. Finally taking that race victory for the team, the number 42. Fantastic. Talk about like how it is the emotion-wise within the team right now.
It's insane feeling. We had too much bad luck this season, and finally the luck on our side. It was crucial to get past Krzysztof Maćkowski. Otherwise, BMW probably would catch us much earlier. So we are happy that we we defend our first position and finally got maximum points. And probably we are the leaders of the championship now.
Yeah, by our calculations, you are leading the championship heading into the final round of the season at Bathurst. Does that kind of feel like a lot of pressure on your shoulders, taking over that lead going into the final round, or is it more of a comfort thing?
Yeah, it's a lot of pressure, and I can give you inside information. I will start the final round instead of Mikhail Baikov. So I will try my best to keep our first place.
Actually, I kind of want to speak then to that effect. If you're just jumping into the car as well, replacing one of your teammates, do you feel like added pressure on your shoulders that you're helping them fight for their championship, not just yours, if you kind of get where I'm coming from?
To be honest, we are working with the car together. So I started to drive Bentley much earlier than all of them. So I'm pretty much confident in myself.
Well, we'll look forward to that in a couple of weeks' time. Once again, thank you very much and congratulations to the team. Go and enjoy it.
Good luck.
And there we go. Ewan O'Leary. Who'd have thought it that interviewing someone who's definitely their first language is not English was much more interesting. We'll go around with that. Ewan, your final thoughts here at Imola?
Yeah, very, very enjoyable once again, even though it's obviously not the greatest circuit for racing historically. It still provided some good racing for us here today. A very close finish as well in race 2. Can't ask for much more. We're very nicely poised going into the final 2 races now.
Well, we'll roll our way over to that in a couple of weeks' time. Before we do that, though, we've got 2 major things to talk to you about, of course. First off, something brand new for us here at the SimGrid, of course. We've got the Coach Dave Time Attack, which will be starting not too long, 2nd to the 8th of May. Suzuka, Spa, Nürburgring, and then we have that broadcasted final at the end of the month. It'll be a publicly voted track where we get to see drivers putting in their very, very best laps. I think it's going to be a very exciting way for drivers to battle it out for a $1,000 prize pool, $700 going to the event winner there in a good few weeks' time. And of course, before we even get that far, we'll be returning here to Imola in just a couple of days, Saturday, for the Coach Dave 1000 race here at Imola. It'll be fantastic. We'll see you then. But until then, it's been me, Lewis McLeod. It's been Ewan O'Leary alongside. And for now, bye-bye.